Chapter 1716. Boom! Finally, along with the explosion of the universe, Undying Heaven Lord's entire body exploded. The power of the explosion was simply unimaginable. It even broke the barrier set up by the 7 great experts. Boom! The stars were destroyed, and the universe sank. Under the Undying Heaven Lord's explosion, the 7 experts retreated frantically, but they were still affected by the explosion. Pfft! Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. Even the Extreme Love Master and the Sky-Devouring Demon Master were not spared, because the power of the explosion was too terrifying. Fortunately, there were 3 of them in front to block it. This also prevented Gai Tianyuan and the rest from being affected. Otherwise, just the aftershock of the explosion would have taken the lives of the 4 of them. Is he dead? After a long time, when the terrifying energy of the explosion dissipated, the Extreme Love Master asked in surprise. He's dead for sure, the Sky-Devouring Demon Master said coldly. As an ultimate, the consequence of choosing to self-explode was to have his soul destroyed. There was no way he could survive. The Sky-Devouring Demon Master was very sure. Puffed. While the 2 of them were discussing, Yi Xian took a step forward and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already at the place where the Undying Heaven Lord had self-exploded. Rumble! The dark vortex had no beginning and no end. The terrifying energy was still lingering, and the faint power of destruction was still lingering in the exploded starry sky. Is he dead? The 6 experts arrived in an instant. The Extreme Love Master asked as he felt the aura of the Undying Heaven Lord. His soul has been destroyed. Yi Xian felt for a long time, and finally spat out these words. Because in his senses, the Undying Heaven Lord was indeed gone. The explosion just now had taken his life. However, Yi Xian didn't have the slightest bit of excitement on his face. Instead, he frowned slightly. Where's his heavenly heart of chaos? Yi Xian muttered doubtfully. Even if the Undying Heaven Lord had died from self-explosion, where was the heavenly heart of chaos in his body? Could it have disappeared along with the Undying Heaven Lord's self-explosion? Yi Xian was puzzled as he looked at the 2 utmost powerful beings. After all, as utmost powerful beings, they should be able to give him a reasonable answer. There has never been a case of an ultimate self-destructing. Perhaps the heavenly heart of chaos was also destroyed in his self-destruction, Extreme Love Master said, not daring to be sure. The primal chaos heavenly core is a manifestation of the will of the universe. It is also a supreme power of law. However, the Undying Heaven Lord's self-destruction could have caused the primal chaos heavenly core to dissipate along with him. The Heaven-Devouring Demon Master said. Yi Xian's brows did not relax at all after hearing the answers from the 2 supreme beings. Instead, his frown deepened. If the heavenly heart of chaos self-destructs along with him, doesn't that mean that the Chaos 12 periods lack a Tao attainment cultivator from the 4th period? Yi Xian said solemnly. The 2 supreme beings were stunned as well. Clearly, Yi Xian's words made sense. However, the person was already dead. Wouldn't it be silly to think about such a vague matter? Yi Xian, don't worry. The Undying Heaven Lord's self-destruction would have killed him. There's no way he could have survived. You've seen the energy of the self-destruction just now. There's no hope of survival for an ultimate to self-destruct. The Heaven-Devouring Demon Master said. Is that really the case? Yi Xian's eyes were deep. He was not satisfied with this answer. Yi Xian had experienced too many deaths, and had even survived from certain deaths several times. Therefore, Yi Xian did not dare to take any chances when it came to the Undying Heaven Lord. Moreover, the most important point was that Yi Xian had also cultivated the Undying Immortal Scripture, and had comprehended the so-called Nirvana power. The so-called Nirvana power was the end of everything. It also represented death. Yi Xian had a better understanding of the Tao of Nirvana. Although the Undying Heaven Lord had self-destructed, Yi Xian was worried that the Undying Heaven Lord still had a trump card to resurrect himself. Of course, this was merely Yi Xian's worry. After all, the probability of this happening was extremely low. After all, the Undying Heaven Lord did not have a forbidden technique to resurrect himself. However, it was better to be safe than sorry. Yi Xian would definitely not give the Undying Heaven Lord any chance. Wait. Under Yi Xian's will, he sat cross-legged in the starry sky, waiting to see if there would be any changes. If the undying Heaven Lord really had a trump card to resurrect himself, he would definitely reassemble his physical body here. If one did not remove the roots, the weeds would grow again when the spring breeze blew. Yi Xian understood this principle very well. He would definitely not give the undying Heaven Lord any chance. This was the difference between him and the undying Heaven Lord. There was no other way. With Yi Xian waiting here, the other 6 could only accompany him. After all this time, they had joined forces to kill an ultimate existence. It was an earth-shattering event. If the undying Heaven Lord could really resurrect himself, he would definitely seek them out in the future. This was not something the 6 of them wanted to see. Waiting was boring. Time passed slowly. However, Yi Xian did not see the undying Heaven Lord resurrecting. Instead, he saw the arrival of the 3 ultimate existences. Rumble. The arrival of the 3 ultimate existences was accompanied by a long sigh from the Master of Primal Chaos. When the undying Heaven Lord's self-destruction produced a terrifying shockwave, the 3 ultimate existences understood everything. Devouring Heaven extreme emotion, the 2 of you have guts. How dare you join forces with Yi Xian to kill the undying Heaven Lord? The Master of Fate's expression was cold as he berated the 2 ultimate existences. However, his emotionless eyes of fate were fixed on Yi Xian. At this moment, the Master of Fate was filled with regret. Why didn't he agree to the undying Heaven Lord's request earlier? Instead, he allowed Yi Xian to strike first, and caused the undying Heaven Lord to suffer a calamity of death. However, regret was useless. The undying Heaven Lord had already self-destructed. No matter how powerful he was, there was no way he could revive the undying Heaven Lord. Who do you think you are? How dare you berate your master? The devouring Heaven Demon Master's face turned cold. As an ultimate existence, he was not afraid of fate. Devouring Heaven, do you really think that your master can't suppress you? The Master of Fate's face was cold and emotionless, as a terrifying power of fate circled around him. If you wish to fight, your master shall accompany you in battle. Boom! The devouring Heaven Demon Master was used to being domineering. How could he possibly lower his head before the Master of Fate? Forget it, Fate. The Master of Primal Chaos frowned and called out to the Master of Fate. This caused the Master of Fate to look at the devouring Heaven Demon Master and Yi Xian coldly before remaining silent. Humph! The devouring Heaven Demon Master snorted coldly before dispersing his aura. Actually, the devouring Heaven Demon Master was just putting on an act. He had no intention of striking out at the Master of Fate. One must know that the Master of Fate wasn't the undying Heaven Lord. He was the second strongest in all of eternity, and could even control the River of Fate. If the Master of Fate were to harden his heart, other than time and primal chaos, any other ultimate existence would be suppressed. This was the horrifying part of the River of Fate. Yi Daoyu, the grudge between you and the undying Heaven Lord has already been resolved. Your master here hopes that you can restrain yourself in the future and stop killing. Otherwise, your master here will have no other choice but to strike out at you. Threat. This was a naked threat. At this moment, the face of the Master of Primal Chaos was solemn and dignified. Evidently, Yi Xian's actions had crossed his bottom line. As the Master of Primal Chaos, his name represented the will of the Primal Chaos universe. Chapter 1717. The Undying Heaven Lord was a Tao enlightened being of the 4th Yuan Hui, and even had the support of the chaotic will. However, he had died in the hands of Yi Xian. This was a taboo for him. Furthermore, this was not the first time Yi Xian had done this. Back then, the Lord of the Extreme Devil had also died in the hands of Yi Xian. These were the lives of 2 utmost beings. As the saying went, the first and second times could not be repeated. If Yi Xian continued to act so brazenly, then as the number 1 utmost being of the chaotic world, he would really have to take action to suppress Yi Xian. This was because the Master of Chaos had the strength to do so. Whether it was his own cultivation, or the existence of the River of Chaos, Yi Xian was no match for him. To put it bluntly, even if the Master of Chaos was surrounded by the 7 utmost beings today, he would definitely not self-destruct like the Undying Heaven Lord. Instead, he would be able to suppress the 7 utmost beings. This was because he had the support of the River of Chaos. No matter how powerful one would still be an ant in front of the River of Chaos. Faced with the threat of the Master of Chaos, Yi Xian chose to ignore it. He did not even bother to argue with him. This was because it was useless to say anything else. Only strength that could crush everything was the greatest capital. Take care of yourself. The Master of Chaos took a deep look at Yi Xian, before turning into a beam of chaotic light and leaving. The Master of Fate's gaze was deep as he left as well. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the Master of Fate was extremely hostile towards Yi Xian. You have to be more careful in the future. The 2 utmost beings are already dissatisfied with you. The Master of Time and Space sent a voice transmission to Yi Xian before he left. He did not want to see Yi Xian become enemies with the 2 utmost beings. This was because this would bring a great calamity to Yi Xian. The 3 utmost beings came and left quickly. This was also a relief for the Extreme Love Master and the others. Yi Xian's gaze was deep. The arrival of the 3 utmost beings was within his expectations. However, it was fortunate that before the 3 utmost beings arrived, he had already joined forces with the 6 utmost beings to kill the Undying Heaven Lord. Otherwise, if the 3 utmost beings were to save the Undying Heaven Lord, all of his plans would have been for naught. At this moment, Yi Xian stared at the exploding starry sky. The power of nirvanic extermination had already disappeared, and he could no longer feel any fluctuations. Yi Xian, if you don't die, you're already dead. There won't be any results even if you continue to wait. It's time for you to make a promise. The heaven-devouring demon master said in a deep voice. Here. Yi Xian casually shot out the tribulation transcender technique, and it was directly caught by the heaven-devouring demon master. This made him happy, and he didn't even say a word as he floated away. He and Yi Xian had only made a deal. Now that the deal was completed, he naturally had to go back and meditate on the complete tribulation transcender technique in his hand, making his cultivation reach a higher level. Li Taichu Jun Wushuang, Yi Xian said with a deep look in his eyes. Emperor. The 2 of them bowed. The Undying Heaven Lord has already fallen. The 2 of you will personally head to the Undying Heaven Palace and kill everyone there. Remember, leave no one alive, Yi Xian said with a cruel expression. As you command, Emperor. The 2 of them secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. They didn't expect Yi Xian to be so ruthless. Not only did he kill the Undying Heaven Lord, but he was also going to destroy the other party's orthodoxy. Li Taichu and Jun Wushuang received the order, and went straight to the Undying Heaven Palace to exterminate the sect. Gai Tianyuan and the Space Beast King also bid farewell at this moment. Yi Xian cupped his hands and bowed to the 2 of them, expressing his gratitude. The 2 half-step supreme experts also left. Mr. Let's go, the Extreme Love Master said softly. Qingmei, you go back first, Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Mr. Yu? The Extreme Love Master wanted to say something to comfort Yi Xian, but when she saw Yi Xian's solemn expression, she swallowed her words. Obviously, Yi Xian was still worried about the Undying Heaven Lord. He wanted to wait here until it was confirmed that the Undying Heaven Lord had fallen. Finally, the Extreme Love Master also left this starry sky. The starry sky was destroyed, and the laws no longer existed. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. He stared at the place where the Undying Heaven Lord had fallen, and carefully sensed the aura of the Undying Heaven Lord. However, Yi Xian did not sense anything, because there was no sign of life. It was as if the Undying Heaven Lord had really died in both body and soul. Is he really dead? Yi Xian murmured. Time passed quickly, and 1,000,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian had also waited for 1,000,000 years, and this shattered starry sky had already been restored. However, he still did not sense any sign of life from the Undying Heaven Lord. Finally, Yi Xian still left. Perhaps he was too suspicious. How could a supreme expert who had self-destructed come back to life? However, what Yi Xian did not know was that in a mysterious land of death, in a dark prison, a black true spirit was roaring with hatred. Endless darkness, a land of death. The pair of eyes of death appeared once again. These eyes contained boundless terror, as they stared at the black true spirit in the dark prison. This was because the black true spirit was dimming. It would not be long before it completely dissipated. Are you willing to accept this? An ancient voice of death rang out, filled with indescribable terror. It also caused the true spirit trapped in the dark prison to tremble in fear. Perhaps it was the last bit of unwillingness before it dissipated. Or perhaps it was an obsession with hatred. But the true spirit let out a venomous roar that suppressed its fear of the eyes of death. Yi Xian, you son of a bitch! I will kill you! Kill you! Buzz! A black rune quietly appeared in the dark prison and merged with the true spirit. It stabilized its crumbling state and prevented it from truly dissipating in the dark prison. There can be no construction without destruction. Construction after destruction. From life to death, all laws will be destroyed. You originally cultivated the law of destruction. This is also the law of death. If you can revive in death, you can naturally return to the primal chaos. You can even break free from the shackles of the strongest and transform into a taboo. An emotionless voice rang out, causing the true spirit to tremble in fear. However, its obsession and hatred for Yi Xian also caused the true spirit to shine brightly. Who are you? Who are you? The black true spirit asked in fear. He was the undying heaven lord who had self-detonated. However, as one of the strongest throughout history, he had never heard of such a terrifying character. Even the so-called taboo characters were not worth mentioning in front of this person. Eternal reincarnation, the final destination of death. This is the purgatory of death. You can call me prison. The emotionless voice rang out once again. The pair of eyes of death slowly dissipated, no longer emitting any fluctuations. Prison. The undying heaven lord's black true spirit was trembling. Just this one word had caused him to be terrified to the extreme. His true spirit had almost dissipated. Many thanks for Senior's grace of rebirth. The undying heaven lord trembled as he spoke. However, he did not receive any response. It was as if this life form called prison did not contain any emotions. Chapter 17:18. The world was in an uproar and all living beings were horrified. Emperor Zongtian's master, Yi Xian, killed the immortal heaven lord in the chaotic starry sky, and even destroyed the immortal heaven palace. This news spread to the 5 regions of chaos at an extremely fast speed. Those who heard it were shocked, and those who heard it were moved. It caused a huge sensation in the chaotic world. It was also because of this battle that Emperor Zongtian's name spread throughout the 5 regions. Emperor Zongtian's reputation also rose. Countless powerful figures came, hoping to be accepted into Zongtian's palace. Suddenly, Zongtian's reputation reached its peak, and had already suppressed the 10,000 Spirit Palace's reputation. Emperor Zongtian's name resounded throughout the chaotic universe. He was already on the same level as the master of all spirits, the leader of the 10th Yuanhui. As the saying goes, there can't be 2 suns in the sky and 2 emperors in a country. The rise of Zongtian's palace was a blow to the 10,000 Spirit Palace's position as the overlord. Fortunately, under the control of the master of all spirits and Yi Xian, the 2 orthodoxies didn't have too many conflicts. However, something happened that completely ignited the fuse between the 2 orthodoxies. A huge battle ensued. It was very simple. An elder of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace discovered a spirit treasure of heaven and earth. Coincidentally, the cultivators of the Heavenly Burial Palace heard the news and arrived. They attacked the elder of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace and seized the spirit treasure of heaven and earth from him. For example, this kind of treasure snatching happened from time to time in the chaotic world. It wasn't a rare thing at all. However, the cultivator of Zongtian's palace was ruthless. He actually killed the elder of the 10,000 Spirit Palace. The situation suddenly became serious. The 2 orthodoxies were already in conflict. Now that Zongtian's palace had killed the elder of the 10,000 Spirit Palace, it immediately magnified the situation. In the beginning, both sides only gathered some people to fight. As casualties began to appear, the matter became more and more serious. In the end, even Li Taichu, a complete Immortal Realm cultivator, was involved. The 10,000 Spirit Palace even sent a half-step supreme expert. Although Li Taichu had his own techniques in Dao, he was still no match for this half-step supreme expert. In the end, Li Taichu escaped with serious injuries. The half-step supreme expert of the 10,000 Spirit Palace didn't have it easy either. Li Taichu's sixth annihilation sword intent was too terrifying and caused him to suffer an unimaginable disaster. 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. Dark silhouettes almost filled the entire Heaven Palace. They were all elders of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. Even the weakest among them was at the early Immortal Realm. Their faces were filled with extreme indignation, and a large amount of discussion came from their mouths. Burying Heaven Palace is going too far. Arrogant, simply arrogant to the extreme. They actually dared to disregard our 10,000 Spirit Celestial Palace and casually kill our disciples. If we don't take revenge, how will the living beings in the 5 regions of chaos view our 10,000 Spirit Celestial Palace? My 10,000 Spirit Celestial Palace is in charge of the 10th Yuanhui. All living beings submit to us, and all living beings respect us. Burying Heaven Palace is nothing. Heavenly Master, you have to uphold justice for us. Indignation, angry roars, and cries of grievance were all heard throughout the Heavenly Palace. Everyone's eyes were also looking in one direction, and this person was the pillar of support in their hearts. Lord of all spirits. His clothes were as white as snow, his expression was indifferent, and his jet black hair fell to his shoulders. However, when his eyes opened and closed, it was as if all the stars in the sky were moving within them. Quiet. The Lord of all spirits only uttered one word, and the entire Heavenly Palace quieted down. The original clamor also disappeared. The supreme power of all eternity was displayed without a doubt. I already know what happened. I will personally talk to Emperor Zongtian about this matter. You all can leave now, said the Lord of all spirits indifferently. Yes, Heavenly Master. The elders were overjoyed. They bowed to the Lord of all spirits and quickly left the Heavenly Palace. Everything was silent. Heaven and earth were silent. The Lord of all spirits stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were deep and calm. His pair of eyes seemed to be able to see through the eternal firmament, looking at the 99 layers of burying Heaven Palace from afar. Yi Xian, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Are you ready? The Lord of all spirits whispered. Buzz. The void rippled with the 10,000 spirits' divine light. The Lord of all spirits took a step forward and disappeared from the 10,000 Spirit Celestial Palace. Emperor Zongtian Palace. Yi Xian was dressed in black. His black hair hung behind his head. His handsome face was like a scholar's. However, when his eyes opened and closed, he gave off a feeling of vicissitudes of life. He was no longer the young man he used to be. Instead, he was a great cultivator who had lived for nearly a Yuanhui. He was comparable to the supreme powerhouses. Emperor Zongtian Palace. Li Taichu's face was pale. The surrounding cultivators were even more furious. However, before they could speak, Fatso Huang hurriedly gave them a look, indicating that they should not say anything. The one who knew best was definitely Fatso Huang, because he noticed that Yi Xian's deep eyes were looking into the distance. Obviously, something big was about to happen. The Lord of all spirits has arrived. You all can leave, Yi Xian said calmly. Huh? Everyone was shocked. Before they could react, the 99 layers of burying Heaven Palace trembled slightly. A supreme power pressed down on them. Buzz! The void opened, and rays of divine light shone. The Lord of all spirits walked out slowly. His expression was calm, and only a ray of 10,000 spirits' divine light surrounded him. The arrival of a supreme powerhouse shocked the world. Fatty Huang and the others were aghast, as if they were facing a great enemy. They surrounded the Lord of all spirits in the center. After all, this was not some rotten fish or shrimp, but a true powerhouse of all ages. Those who come are guests. What are you all doing? Yi Xian frowned and said, Leave. Yes, Emperor Lord. Everyone hurriedly left the imperial palace. However, they quickly gathered all the cultivators above the immortal realm. They even activated the heavenly protection formation, ready to support Yi Xian at any time. Inside the imperial palace, They are naturally nervous when a supreme powerhouse arrives. I'm sorry for making a fool of myself, Yi Xian said calmly. Should I call you Emperor Lord of Burying Heaven Palace or Yi Xian? The Lord of all spirits did not answer the question. The title is just a title. You can call me by my real name if you want, Yi Xian said. All right. The Lord of all spirits nodded and said, the Lord of all spirits is just a title that people use. You can call me by my real name, Yi Lingtian. That's great. Yi Xian smiled and nodded. Yi Xian, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. I've been waiting for this battle for almost a yuan hui. The Lord of all spirits said in a deep voice. I know, Yi Xian said. I don't care about the so-called orthodoxies. I don't care if they live or die. What I really care about is the result of this battle. The Lord of all spirits said. I'm no match for you. Yi Xian lightly smiled as he gave the Lord of all spirits a stunned answer. This also caused a look of understanding to flash through the Lord of all spirits' eyes. Indeed, although Yi Xian had opened the 10 heavenly gates and killed the undying Heaven Lord with the help of 6 experts, he was still no match for the Lord of all spirits. Chapter 17-19. First of all, Yi Xian's cultivation was still a notch below that of the strongest, and the most crucial problem was that the Lord of all spirits was a contemporary who had achieved Tao and was supported by the will of the chaotic universe. Not to mention Yi Xian at this moment, even if the 3 strongest fought against the Lord of all spirits, the Lord of all spirits would still be in an invincible position. This was the terror of a contemporary who had achieved Tao. Yi Xian, what I want is a fair fight with you, so that I can untie the knot in my heart and pursue a higher realm. After the Lord of all spirits said this, the invincible power on his body faded, and even the will of the universe supporting him disappeared. In that case, shall we fight? The Lord of all spirits asked. At this moment, the Lord of all spirits was only left with the strongest cultivation, and no longer had the support of the will of the universe. This also made his eyes burn with passion as he looked at Yi Xian. If you want to fight, I will fight. Boom! Tong Tian moved the ground, and the 10 heavenly gates and the halos of heaven burial reincarnation spread out. The entire imperial palace disappeared in the 99 levels of heaven and rushed into the starry universe under the horrified gazes of Fatso Huang and the others. Sir, you must come back safely. Looking at the boundless starry universe above their heads, Fatso Huang and the others prayed secretly in their hearts. They knew that Yi Xian was going to fight the Lord of all spirits, and this battle would be extremely difficult. Time passed little by little, and in the blink of an eye, 3,000 years had passed. Time was like water, passing by in a flash. In these 3,000 years, the entire chaotic world was shaken to the extreme, because in the vast starry universe, stars fell from the sky from time to time, and the 9 heavens star river poured down, causing unimaginable disasters to the 5 regions of chaos. The people were plunged into misery and suffering, and disasters were falling from the sky. It was not until a shocking news came that the creatures of the 5 regions of chaos understood that the natural disasters that had occurred in the past 3,000 years were caused by the battle between the Lord of Buried Sky and the Lord of all spirits. The disasters continued. Meteors fell from the sky, the earth sank, the dome collapsed, and the mountains and rivers turned into ashes. Streaks of divine light streaked across the starry sky of the universe, and that world-destroying aura hung upside down. This great battle that attracted the attention of the world was still going on. No one knew the outcome of this world-shaking battle, and no one knew when it would end. It wasn't until 10,000 years had passed that the calamities gradually subsided. The vast starry universe also gradually calmed down. Buried Heaven Palace. Boom! The imperial palace descended from the starry sky and stood firmly in the 99th layer of heaven. As the doors of the imperial palace rumbled open, a figure walked out from the imperial palace. Emperor! The crowd cheered and quickly walked towards Yi Xian. They even knelt down and shouted the name of Yi Xian, Sovereign Lord Zongtian. Yi Xian was dressed in black, but his clothes were somewhat disheveled and stained with large amounts of blood. Even his complexion was somewhat pale, but his eyes were still as deep as an ancient pond. Clearly, This battle had been extremely difficult. Even Yi Xian had suffered heavy injuries. However, everyone was puzzled. They didn't know what the outcome of this battle was. And where was the Lord of all spirits at this moment? Was he dead? Or had he left? However, since Yi Xian didn't say anything, they didn't dare to ask. Fengtian, stay. Everyone else leave. Yi Xian said weakly. Yes, Emperor. Everyone hurriedly accepted the order and left the 99th layer of heaven. Inside the imperial palace. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out from Yi Xian's mouth. He staggered slightly, and this made Yi Fengtian's expression change drastically. Master, where are you hurt? Yi Fengtian hurriedly supported Yi Xian, but Yi Xian slowly pushed him away. Although he staggered a little, he didn't fall to the ground. As expected, I'm still a little bit away from becoming an omnipotent. Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and a self-deprecating smile appeared. This battle had been going on for more than 10,000 years. The Lord of all spirits had dispersed the support of the will of the chaotic universe, but he was still an omnipotent after all. With just his cultivation base alone, he had fought with Yi Xian for more than 10,000 years. There was no winner or loser in this battle. Although Yi Xian was seriously injured, the Lord of all spirits didn't have it easy either. He had also suffered terrible injuries. This was also thanks to Yi Xian's several great forbidden secret techniques. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been a match for the Lord of all spirits. If there was really a winner or loser, Yi Xian could say with self-deprecation that he had indeed lost. He hadn't lost to the Lord of all spirits, but to his own cultivation base. It wasn't because he was an omnipotent. There was indeed a gap between him and an omnipotent. Although this gap wasn't big, it was enough to determine victory and defeat. However, after this battle, the Lord of all spirits laughed hysterically because in his heart, it wasn't Yi Xian who had lost to him, but himself. As an omnipotent, he had a slight advantage over Yi Xian in terms of cultivation base. On the other hand, Yi Xian was only in the immortal realm. Just this point alone made him feel that he had an unfair advantage. Moreover, after more than 10,000 years of continuous fighting, he still couldn't truly defeat Yi Xian. Even if he had the upper hand, it would only end in a draw in the end. Today, Yi Xian had opened the 10 heavenly gates. If he opened the 11 heavenly gates in the future, would he still be a match for Yi Xian? The Lord of all spirits left mournfully. This battle had fulfilled his long-cherished wish, but it also made him truly understand the gap between him and Yi Xian. Perhaps Yi Xian wasn't as good as him now, but it wouldn't be long before Yi Xian caught up. The Lord of all spirits understood this very well. However, it was also because of this battle that the Lord of all spirits untied the knot in his heart. He naturally wasn't a mediocre person to be able to become an omnipotent of the 10th eon. Since Yi Xian could continuously raise his cultivation, then Yi Lingtian could as well. The Lord of all spirits, Yi Lingtian, returned to the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace and directly issued a decree, announcing that he would not come out of seclusion. He also ordered everyone in the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace to cultivate themselves and not to compete with any forces or individuals for fame and fortune. This was because there were only 300 million years until the end of the 10th eon. When the 10th eon ended, it would enter a new eon, and the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace would eventually become a thing of the past. There would be a new omnipotent of all ages, leading his orthodoxy, to take charge of the 11th eon. Although it was a little too early for the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace to withdraw, no one dared to disobey the decree of the Lord of all spirits, and the entire 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace kept a low profile. The world was shocked, and there was a lot of discussion. This battle shocked the entire chaotic world, and all the people in the world were guessing the result of this battle. Some said that Emperor Zongtian had won, while others said that the Lord of all spirits had won. All kinds of opinions continued to spread, and it became a hot topic in the entire chaotic world. However, as the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace issued a decree, announcing that the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace would go into seclusion, all the creatures in the 5 regions of chaos were in an uproar. Since then, all the creatures in the world thought that Emperor Zongtian must have won. Otherwise, Why would the Lord of all spirits let his orthodoxy go into seclusion? Before such opinions appeared, someone from the Zongtian palace appeared to refute the rumors and announced that this battle was not just a draw. Only then did all the voices of discussion be suppressed. However, because of this battle, Yi Xian's name as Emperor Zongtian's Lord shook the entire chaotic world, and he was also revered by all the creatures in the world. Chapter 1720. All laws come from the same source, the universe is one. Nothing is all laws, and all laws are the universe. The heavens chanted, and the heavens chanted. Yi Xian was teaching, and Yi Fengtian was quietly listening. Strands of green light surrounded Yi Fengtian, and a boundless life force was forming. Under Yi Xian's supervision, Yi Fengtian cultivated diligently. He was gradually able to control the mysterious power in his body, and he was painstakingly nurturing it. Yi Fengtian's cultivation level rose rapidly, but Yi Xian was not satisfied. At this rate, Yi Fengtian would need 100 million years to reach the complete immortal realm. Yi Xian's heart was filled with urgency, because the opportunity to open the seventh cauldron was Yi Fengtian's life force. But Yi Fengtian's cultivation had just begun, and the life force in his body was too weak. He could not open the seventh cauldron. Ever since the battle with the Lord of all spirits, Yi Xian had realized that his cultivation was lacking. This caused him to cultivate even more crazily while teaching Yi Fengtian. However, opening the 11th gate of heaven required an unimaginable amount of energy. With Yi Xian's own cultivation, he did not know when he would be able to open it. Fortunately, as Burial Heaven Palace's power grew, the treasures they collected were piled up like mountains. It was enough for Yi Xian and Yi Fengtian to cultivate. Time flew by, and the years flew by. Day by day, Yi Xian's cultivation level also rose. The amount of spiritual energy he absorbed every day was unimaginable, and he was becoming stronger step by step. One had to admit that Burial Heaven Palace provided Yi Xian with endless cultivation resources. This greatly solved Yi Xian's problem. But as Yi Xian's cultivation level grew, and he was getting closer to opening the 11th gate of heaven, the urgency in his heart grew more and more serious. This was because Yi Xian could faintly feel a heavenly aura pressing down on his mind. If he guessed correctly, this heavenly aura was the will of the chaotic universe. According to the black jade slip sent by the two forbidden figures, when he opened the 11th gate of heaven, the chaotic heavenly punishment would descend. Thinking of the terror of the chaotic heavenly punishment, Yi Xian's scalp tingled. He did not have the slightest confidence that he could pass it. This was a calamity that even the forbidden figures feared. At this moment, Yi Xian's only hope was to open the seventh cauldron. Only by opening the cauldron and obtaining the secret within, perhaps there was a chance of passing the chaotic heavenly punishment. Master. While Yi Xian was deep in thought, Yi Fengtian woke up from his cultivation. Currently, he had already opened the fourth gate of heaven and walked out of his own method and Tao. The life force within his body was even more boundless. However, this was the result of a large amount of resources. Otherwise, with Yi Fengtian's own efforts, he would have been able to cultivate for a very long time. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and raised his head to look at Yi Fengtian. His eyes were deep as he said, "Fengtian, although your progress is already extremely fast, it's still far from enough. Your disciple is ashamed." Yi Fengtian's face was slightly red. With so many resources, he could only open the fourth gate of heaven. Even he was ashamed of himself. Blindly cultivating in seclusion does not seem to have much effect on you. I will take you to the mortal world to gain experience. I hope you can open the seventh gate of heaven as soon as possible, Yi Xian said. According to Yi Xian's deduction, only when Yi Fengtian opened the seventh gate of heaven could he truly use the life force in his body. Only then would he be able to unlock the secret of the seventh cauldron. On this day, Yi Xian left Jintian Palace with Yi Fengtian. Everything was left to Fatso Huang and the others. 8 million years. 8 million years was an extremely long time for a cultivator. Yi Xian also took Yi Fengtian to travel the 5 regions of chaos for 8 million years. They traveled through mountains, rivers, lakes, deserts, and seas. With the sky as their blanket and the earth as their seat, the master and disciple turned into true cultivators. They traveled to every corner of the 5 regions of chaos. During these 8 million years, Yi Fengtian's cultivation grew at a frightening rate. The life force he comprehended was also gradually completed. His entire body emitted a trace of supreme power. He respected life and was tolerant of all things. During these 8 million years, Yi Fengtian changed a lot. Whether it was in terms of cultivation or knowledge, he had undergone earth-shattering changes. He fought demons, fought against powerful cultivators, and even fought against the endless insect race in the starry sky. He was even thrown into the chaotic black hole by Yi Xian to comprehend the mysteries of life and death. Over the past 8 million years, Yi Fengtian had experienced unimaginable growth. He had truly comprehended the profound meaning of life. His entire being had become calmer and calmer. He even had an indescribable sense of majesty. In these 8 million years, other than answering his disciples' questions about cultivation, Yi Xian had been watching from the sidelines. Even when Yi Fengtian was in danger of death, he hadn't helped him. Yi Fengtian gradually became able to control the life force in his body. His entire body emitted a kind of power that only the strongest cultivators of all time could possess. Supreme power. After 8 million years, Yi Fengtian already had a trace of supreme power. Although this power was very faint, it truly existed in his body. Finally, when 10 million years passed, Yi Fengtian finally broke through and easily opened the 7th gate. Boom boom boom. At the peak of the snowy mountain, stars filled the sky. That green light filled the sky and earth, and a majestic life force swirled between heaven and earth. Wherever this life force passed, the entire snow mountain began to recover. Large amounts of vegetation drilled out from the ground, and even the snow couldn't drown out the vitality of these plants. Master, I did it! After 10 million years of bitter cultivation, Yi Fengtian had become mature and steady. Especially his pair of eyes. They were blooming with the brilliance of life. It was as if wherever his gaze landed, all withered things would be revived because of him. Good. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at his disciple in front of him and nodded approvingly. A deep light flashed through his eyes. During these 10 million years, Yi Xian had seen all of Yi Fengtian's growth. He could not help but sigh. This disciple of his might really be the child of destiny. Judging from Yi Fengtian's current aura, he already had the aura of a supreme cultivator. Moreover, the great Tao of life that he comprehended shocked Yi Xian. If Yi Xian's guess was correct, perhaps this disciple of his would be the strongest cultivator of all time in the 11th Yuanying. Of course, this was only Yi Xian's guess. After all, no one could say for sure in the future. Whether or not Yi Fengtian could reach that level depended entirely on his luck. However, the most important thing now was that Yi Fengtian could finally control the life force in his body and open the 7th cauldron. Master, I should be able to open the heaven-shattering cauldron now, right? Yi Fengtian asked expectantly. Chapter 1721. I can definitely do it. Yi Xian's eyes shone brightly. He had been waiting for this day for thousands of years. Fortunately, Yi Fengtian did not disappoint him. Buzz! Yi Xian gently rolled up his sleeves, and the 7th cauldron appeared. The ancient cauldron was engraved with mysterious patterns, and a mysterious aura was being emitted from it. Boom! Yi Fengtian did not dare to be careless. He immediately activated the life force in his body. A green light rippled out and engulfed the small cauldron. Boom boom boom. In the next moment, something astonishing happened. Space trembled, and the cauldron trembled in a terrifying manner. Streaks of mysterious light appeared on the cauldron, and the sound of mysterious chanting could be faintly heard in the sky. Good. Yi Xian was overjoyed. Even though he had cultivated to the point where he could not feel anything, being able to activate the 7th cauldron still made him extremely excited. Buzz! Ripples spread out from the cauldron, and the mysterious chanting sound became louder and louder. An indescribable profound meaning overflowed from the small cauldron. This also made Yi Xian know that the time had come. Go! An explosive shout came from Yi Xian's mouth. The ancient bronze scripture appeared, and ancient pages flipped through. At this moment, It emitted an extremely mysterious light. Chi. In an instant, the seventh cauldron turned into a beam of light and merged with the ancient bronze scripture. A small cauldron image gradually appeared on the blank page. It was also at this moment that the ancient bronze scripture shone brightly. A mysterious rune appeared and released a terrifying power. Come. Yi Xian did not dare to be careless. He stretched out his 5 fingers, and the mysterious rune shot towards him. In a flash, it merged with his forehead. Boom! When the mysterious rune merged with Yi Xian, his expression suddenly became sluggish. It was as if he had lost his soul. He did not speak or move. Teacher! Yi Fengtian's expression suddenly changed. He was afraid that Yi Xian was in danger. However, before he could go forward to check, the ancient bronze scripture had already landed on top of Yi Xian's head. The 7 pages of the ancient bronze scripture were flipping continuously. The terrifying aura it released made it impossible for Yi Fengtian to get close to Yi Xian. It was boundless and limitless. The primal chaos vanished without a trace, and the universe disappeared. Where is this? Yi Xian exclaimed in surprise. He realized that he was in a place of nothingness. There was no heaven or earth, no universe or starry sky. This place seemed to be isolated from everything. Only he was here. Eternal dream. Rumble. The heavens trembled, and the primordial divine voice echoed. Without waiting for Yi Xian to react, wisps of smoke like white gas rose up from the void and quickly engulfed him. Ah! Pain. Extreme pain. Yi Xian felt as if his soul was about to explode in the white smoke. However, the mysterious words of the ancient bronze scripture flowed through his mind, forcing him to endure the pain that was worse than death. He silently memorized the words of the ancient bronze scripture in his heart. He did not know how long had passed. It could have been a day, a year, or even a yuanhui. Yi Xian had already forgotten the concept of time. The pain he endured was also dissipating little by little. Only the mysterious words of the ancient bronze scripture continued to flow in his heart. Outside, Yi Fengtian was anxiously pacing back and forth. Yi Xian had already lost his mind for 1,000 years. If it were not for the fact that Yi Xian's body was still alive, Yi Fengtian would have thought that Yi Xian's soul had already dispersed and died. Buzz! Suddenly, just as Yi Fengtian was about to lose his patience, the ancient bronze scripture above Yi Xian's head dissipated. It then turned into a beam of light and entered Yi Xian's forehead. In the next moment, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. However, his eyes were cloudy and confused. It was as if he had slept for a very long time. Now that he had woken up, his consciousness was still somewhat hazy. However, the moment Yi Xian opened his eyes, everything in the world began to distort. Even Yi Fengtian, who was in front of him, suddenly felt an extreme sense of terror. The life force in his body seemed to be dissipating. Master! Yi Fengtian hurriedly shouted, hoping to wake Yi Xian from his dazed state. Perhaps it was because of Yi Fengtian's shout. Yi Xian's cloudy eyes gradually became clear. A black light flashed through his eyes, and the distorted world returned to normal. Master, you're finally awake. Yi Fengtian heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xian's state just now was too terrifying. Yi Fengtian himself had almost melted into the world. Yi Fengtian still had lingering fears. Eternal dream? As Yi Xian woke up, he began to murmur in his sleep. It was as if he was savoring these words. His brows were tightly knit together. Eternal dream. This was a forbidden technique, one that surpassed forbidden techniques. Although it couldn't be considered a forbidden technique, it was still a supreme technique that could shock the heavens and make ghosts and gods weep. What was the meaning of eternal dream? Eternal dream, reincarnation in the sky. The eternal dream could allow one to live forever. However, this kind of eternal existence was not real life. Rather, it existed in a different form. It was as if one had fallen into an eternal dream. In this dream, one could unearth all of one's potential and improve at an unimaginable speed. However, this forbidden technique was extremely dangerous. If one used the eternal dream, they could live forever in a dream, never to wake up. It was also possible that this person would no longer appear in the chaos verse. However, the benefits were obvious. In the eternal dream, Everything one saw and thought could come true. The caster could transform into anyone, and even possess everything of that person. To put it bluntly, within the great dream of eternity, Yi Xian could transform into any taboo character he'd ever seen, as well as any supreme being. He could also master all sorts of divine abilities and secret techniques he'd ever seen. Of course, this was also an extremely dangerous thing. If Yi Xian transformed into someone else, it was very likely that he would lose himself and become the person he had transformed into. Moreover, this was only one of the benefits. In the eternal dream, Yi Xian would constantly reincarnate and experience things that he had once experienced. He could even reincarnate into his past and present lives. The eternal dream, eternal dream, eternal dream, eternal dream. However, eternal dream was a dream, and not the real chaos verse. Therefore, the great dream of eternity was too dangerous. It was also the most terrifying taboo technique that Yi Xian had obtained. This technique had already surpassed the taboo. Although it wasn't as good as the taboo heaven technique, it was still extremely terrifying. This was because one would forever live in the dream and no longer exist in the world. This was almost equivalent to one's soul dispersing and dying. However, the eternal dream was not a dead end. If the caster could wake up from the dream, everything that he had experienced in the dream would appear in reality on the caster's body. Danger and opportunity coexisted, and fortune and misfortune depended on each other. This was the eternal dream, and it also made Yi Xian's mood extremely complicated. Originally, he had hoped to obtain a forbidden technique. Only then would he be able to find Lu Bai. Unfortunately, the eternal dream was not the forbidden technique he wanted. Master, what's wrong? Seeing Yi Xian's expression changing, Yi Fengtian probed. Nothing. Yi Xian's thoughts turned, and he suppressed his complicated mood. No matter what, the eternal dream was a trump card. Perhaps it was the only way for him to survive the chaotic divine punishment. Fengtian, it's time for us to go back. Yes, master. Yi Xian waved his sleeve and directly opened up a realm-crossing door. The master and disciple took a step forward and disappeared. Chapter 1722. The sky was boundless, and the world was vast. The 99 heavenly palaces spanned across the sky, and the imperial palace was at the top of the 99 heavenly palaces. Without Yi Xian's permission, no one was allowed to step into it. Inside the imperial palace, spiritual energy floated, and laws were born. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on a cloud. He frowned slightly as if he had a lot on his mind. A hint of heaviness flashed through his eyes. Since Yi Xian returned to the buried heaven palace, he had been cultivating in seclusion to comprehend the eternal dream. However, the more he understood about the eternal dream, the more uneasy Yi Xian felt. Eternal dream, Yi Xian muttered in a heavy voice. His eyes were filled with endless self-ridicule. If it wasn't a critical moment, he definitely wouldn't use this taboo heaven-defying technique. He would live forever in a dream without himself in the world. The eternal dream was too dangerous. Phew! Yi Xian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He calmed himself down and temporarily didn't think about the dangers of the eternal dream. His only task now was to open the 11th heavenly gate and face the most dangerous chaos heavenly punishment. He had to face it sooner or later. Avoiding it was the behavior of a coward, and it would affect his invincible heart. He had to take this step sooner or later. Since he was going to do it, there was no need to be afraid. Even if the chaos heavenly punishment was feared by the taboo, Yi Xian had to overcome it. Only then could his cultivation continue to improve. Rumble. Yi Xian's mind settled. He formed a seal with both hands and began to use the buried heaven technique. The 10 heavenly gates rotated behind him, and there were also buried heaven reincarnation ribbons surrounding him. Yi Xian cultivated with Yi Fengtian for millions of years. Not only did Yi Fengtian's cultivation soar, but he also cultivated diligently. Now that Yi Xian's cultivation was at its peak, he was not far from opening the 11th heavenly gate. According to Yi Xian's estimation, he would be able to open the 11th heavenly gate in millions of years at most. Millions of years seemed long, but it was actually very fast. According to Yi Xian's normal cultivation speed, It would take him at least half a yuan hui to open the 11th gate of heaven. This was because Yi Xian's body was like a bottomless pit. The amount of cultivation resources required to open each divine gate was unimaginable. This was all thanks to Yi Xian's burying heaven palace, which provided him with an endless supply of cultivation resources. That was why his cultivation speed had skyrocketed. Cultivation was boring and tasteless. Only by enduring the unbearable loneliness of ordinary people could one become stronger than anyone else. Time flowed like water, alternating with time. Yi Xian savored loneliness and also enjoyed it. Every day, he immersed himself in a sea of heavenly materials and earthly treasures to cultivate. He crazily devoured the endless spiritual energy, allowing his cultivation to constantly grow. Time passed quickly, and the sun and moon alternated. In the blink of an eye, 10 million years had passed. During this time, burying heaven palace had grown to an unimaginable level. There were more than a dozen immortal great perfection experts, and countless immortal great perfection experts. The disciples of the orthodoxy were all over the 5 regions. There were also half-step omnipotent experts who had been silent for many years, who joined burying heaven palace. This also pushed burying heaven palace's momentum to the extreme. It vaguely became the master of the 10th yuan hui, as if it had replaced the all-spirit sky palace. Time passed quickly, and there were less than 300 million years left before the end of the 10th yuan hui. Although the entire chaotic world seemed peaceful, and burying heaven palace's power had reached its peak, there were surging waves in the dark. This was because when every yuan hui was about to end, this period was also the most peaceful era. Everyone and forces would be silent. This was because everyone was waiting for the beginning of the next yuan hui. When the new yuan hui began, it would be the cruelest era. Whether it was the orthodoxies, the immortal great beings, or even the peerless geniuses who had been hiding for countless years, they would all come out when the new yuan hui began. Who would become the new master of the yuan hui? Who would rule the 11th yuan hui? Who would become the new omnipotent expert? These answers would all be given when the new yuan hui began. Everyone was preparing, and even some people who had never come out were also proving the saying, "If you don't make a sound, you will amaze the world with a single brilliant feat." Rumble. In the 99 heavenly palaces, the doors of the imperial palace opened with a rumble. The crowd was waiting outside the imperial palace. When Yi Xian strolled out of the imperial palace, he was accompanied by the sound of a tsunami. "Greetings, my lord." The mountains and rivers shook, and the heavens and earth trembled. Everyone prostrated themselves on the ground and shouted the name of Yi Xian. Everyone's eyes were filled with reverence. "Everyone, there's no need to be so courteous." Yi Xian was dressed in black. His once black hair had turned silver white. At this moment, it hung behind his head and rippled slightly in the wind. Thousands of years had passed, and no one knew why Yi Xian had become like this. Why did his originally black hair turn snow white after thousands of years? What exactly did Yi Xian experience during these thousands of years of cultivation? Everyone was puzzled, but no one dared to ask. Even Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen were bewildered. Yi Xian. His gaze was as deep as an ancient pond. He looked at the people who were bowing to him, and realized that there were many unfamiliar faces, but each of them had an extremely powerful cultivation base. Yi Xian came to a realization. It seemed that these unfamiliar faces were all cultivators, who had just joined the burying heaven palace. 3 days later, there will be a great tribulation. "You may all disperse," Yi Xian said calmly. "As you command, my lord." Everyone kowtowed in response, and left the 99 heavenly palaces. Only Yi Xian left Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen behind, and asked them to enter the imperial palace with him. Inside the imperial palace, Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the stars above his head. His gaze was slightly erratic, as if he was reminiscing about something. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen waited patiently. They knew that Yi Xian must have something to tell them. "How many years have you been with me?" Finally, Yi Xian came back to his senses, and turned to look at the two. 832,840,000 years, Gu Beichen said solemnly. Yi Xian nodded and said, "So many years have passed." You followed me from the human world to the chaos. We've been apart more than we've been together. It's been hard on you all these years. Sir, don't be like this. It's a pity that Beichen and I are useless. We can't help you at all with our cultivation base. We can only take care of some trivial matters for you, Fatso Huang said bitterly and self-deprecatingly. At this moment, Gu Beichen had only opened the 7th divine gate, and Fatso Huang had only opened the 4th. They were indeed a little weak in the Burying Heaven Palace. Actually, I've mistreated you for following me for so many years. Yi Xian sighed. He only cared about his own cultivation, and most of the time, he didn't have the time to care about the two's cultivation. If he could spare some time to guide them in their cultivation, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen wouldn't have their current cultivation base. Sir, please don't say that. If you didn't bring us along, I'm afraid we would have died of old age in the human world, Fatso Huang said in a rare serious tone. Chapter 1723. Buzz. Yi Xian flipped his hand, and 2 Qingquan pouches appeared. He handed them to the two and said, "There are a lot of chaos spiritual items, and some of my cultivation techniques, including a tribulation transcender technique. You two can cultivate it diligently. I believe that when the 10th period is over, you two should be able to reach the complete immortal realm." After receiving the Qingquan pouches from Yi Xian, their expressions changed slightly, because they felt that Yi Xian seemed to be making arrangements for his death. "Sir, are you not confident that you can pass the tribulation in 3 days?" Fatso Huang asked worriedly. The one who knew Yi Xian the best was undoubtedly Fatso Huang. How can the chaos heavenly punishment be so easy to pass? Yi Xian laughed self-deprecatingly, then his expression turned serious. He looked at the two and said, "I want the two of you to promise me one thing." "Sir, please speak." The two hurriedly bowed. "If I succeed in transcending the tribulation, everything will be fine. But if I fail, I want the two of you to leave the heavenly burial palace and find a place to live in seclusion for the rest of your life. Don't make enemies with anyone, and don't fight for the position of the so-called strongest," Yi Xian warned. This, Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen were shocked when they heard this, because they felt that Yi Xian was really making arrangements for his death. Burial Heaven Palace was created by Yi Xian himself. As long as he was alive, no one dared to go against his will. Even Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen had risen along with him. Even if their cultivation was not good, everyone had to listen to them. However, if Yi Xian failed his tribulation and really died in the primal chaos heavenly punishment, the two of them wouldn't be able to suppress the cultivators of the heavenly burial palace with their cultivation bases. They would only bring about a fatal disaster to the two of them. Therefore, Yi Xian reminded the two of them that if he was really gone, they should give up all their rights in Burial Heaven Palace and live in seclusion. This was the best ending for them. "Sir, you will definitely survive this calamity," Fatso Huang said with a trembling voice. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Actually, I'm most worried about the two of you. Although we're master and servant in name, we're actually no different from brothers. After all, you followed me from the human realm to the chaos. Throughout this journey, the two of you are the only people I've trusted the most. So, I want you to promise me that if I'm really gone, you must leave Sky-Burying Palace," Yi Xian said. "Sir, we understand," Gu Beichen said bitterly. "Go." Yi Xian waved at the two of them, and the two of them left reluctantly. Chaos heavenly punishment. Yi Xian looked up at the vast starry sky as heavenly gates rose one after another behind him. When the apparition of the 11th heavenly gate was faintly discernible, the entire Tharch Palace trembled slightly. 3 days later, Yi Xian would open the 11th heavenly gate and welcome his chaos heavenly punishment. If he succeeded, he would have a boundless future, but if he failed, his soul would scatter. What was to come would come, and what was to be faced could not be avoided. Yi Xian had already made all the preparations. Yi Xian spat out a stream of turbid air. He sat cross-legged in the Tharch Palace and began to adjust his condition. He wanted to raise his essence, energy, and spirit to the peak, so that he could face the chaos heavenly punishment in 3 days. 3 days later, rumble. In the Aeon Vault of Heaven, heaven and earth shook. Ancient auras came from the 99th layer of heaven. All the cultivators of sky-burying palace looked on with reverence. Everyone's eyes were filled with reverence. In the 99th layer of heaven, and the arch palace slowly rose until it left the 99th layer of heaven and entered the chaos heavens. Congratulations, the arch palace lord, for successfully overcoming the calamity. Heaven and earth trembled and the mountains roared. All the cultivators of sky-burying palace knelt down and watched the arch palace enter the chaos heavens with reverence. Everyone's face was filled with excitement. At the same time, everyone sensed it. The 7 supremes opened their eyes at the same time and looked towards the chaos heavens. Each of them had a different expression, and a trace of shock flashed across their eyes. What tribulation is he facing? Is he opening the 11th gate of heaven? Sir, you will definitely succeed. The 7 supremes whispered and looked towards Yi Xian's direction from afar. Everyone's eyes were filled with complex emotions. If Yi Xian succeeded this time, it meant that his cultivation base would increase tremendously again. He would not be any weaker than the Supremes. On the other side, in the distant chaos world, Aeon Shadow looked at him indifferently. Gai Tianyuan accompanied him with a complicated look in his eyes. Master, can he succeed? Gai Tianyuan asked. If he is one of the few forbidden existences, he can pass the chaos heavenly punishment. Otherwise he will die without a doubt. Aeon Shadow said faintly. His scarlet eyes flashed with a deep light. Whether it was him or the other forbidden existences, they had always thought that Yi Xian was the reincarnation of someone, and that this person was the forbidden existences of the forbidden existences. Now it was time to verify this matter. If Yi Xian was really one of the forbidden existences of the forbidden existences, he would be able to pass this tribulation. On the other hand, if Yi Xian faced the chaos heavenly punishment, he would die without a burial ground. This was because even forbidden existences were afraid of the chaos heavenly punishment, let alone Yi Xian who could pass it. At the same time, Aeon Shadow was not the only one paying attention to Yi Xian. In a certain corner of the chaotic universe, the chess ancestor was holding a black and white chessboard. He was also looking in Yi Xian's direction. Whether you are the reincarnation of a forbidden existence or not, we will know today, the chess ancestor said in a hoarse voice. In the ancestral land of the cosmic beasts, the ancestor of the beasts had a deep look in his eyes. He did not say anything, and only let out a long sigh that contained an indescribable meaning. In another corner of the chaos, the mysterious person who walked out of the chaos river was also looking at Yi Xian. However, his scarlet eyes flickered as killing intent flashed in them from time to time. It doesn't matter if you are him or not. No one can play chess for all eternity. Today the chaos heavenly punishment is descending upon the world. Are you going to reveal your true self? The mysterious person who walked out of the chaos river muttered in a trembling voice. In the vast cosmos, in the boundless universe, an empyrean palace spanned across the cosmos. Large stars rotated as waves in the astral sea churned. However, the empyrean palace was not affected in any way as it towered in the cosmos. Rumble. The heavens trembled as the empyrean palace's doors rumbled open. A deep figure walked out of the empyrean palace, as his snow-white hair fluttered in the cosmos. Open! Bang bang bang. It was sublimated to the extreme as the heavens exploded. Heavenly gates opened one after another in a terrifying manner, as the heaven burial samsara flowed out. Yi Xian's entire body released a heavenly might that had never been seen before. The 10 heavenly gates spanned across the ages. At that moment, they rumbled and rotated in the cosmos, emitting the might of the chaos that shocked the world. However, this was only the beginning. It was not the end. The 11th heavenly gate's phantom image appeared as a terrifying aura that could sweep through the cosmos spread over. Rumble. Finally, under Yi Xian's extreme sublimation, the 11th heavenly gate finally took form. The mysterious samsara halo bloomed on the door. It was so blinding that one could not open their eyes. Chapter 1724. Powerful. Extremely powerful. At this moment, Yi Xian felt a power he had never felt before. The power in his body was boiling like lava, giving him the urge to release it. Arg! His roar shattered the starry sky and exploded the chaos. Yi Xian spat out an ancient thunderous sound, causing the entire universe to explode. The 11 heavenly gates rumbled as they rotated, and the light of reincarnation that poured down from them illuminated him with boundless magnificence. Rumble! The heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. The chaos trembled, and Yi Xian's aura rose at a terrifying speed. He, who had opened the 11th heavenly gate, was undergoing a qualitative transformation. All living beings were shocked, and the world was shocked. This scene fell into everyone's eyes, especially the 7 strongest beings. The aura released by Yi Xian made their hearts tremble in fear. Dang dang dang! Suddenly, just as everyone was feeling shocked, one mysterious bell after another rang out, causing the entire chaos-verse to rumble and shake. It was as if the chaos had exploded, and like the morning bell and evening drum, the mysterious and heavy bell sounds came from the universe. This bell sound shook one's soul, as if it had existed since ancient times. It made one's soul feel like it was about to collapse. Chaos Heavenly Punishment. When Yi Xian opened the 11th heavenly gate, the Chaos Heavenly Punishment finally descended. The aura of destruction filled the entire starry sky and universe. It's coming! Rumble! The 11 heavenly gates rumbled and rotated. Yi Xian roared in the starry sky. He looked up, and his expression was ferocious and terrifying. His eyes flickered with madness. The starry sky was dark and silent. The rotating stars were stagnating, and the surging sea of stars was calming down. An indescribable terror was growing, and only the mysterious and heavy bell sounds kept coming. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying thing happened. Chi. The eternal universe was filled with order. Chains appeared out of nowhere, and an aura of order spread out. These chains seemed to have a mind of their own, and they instantly wrapped around Yi Xian. Chains of order? Yi Xian roared coldly. The 11 heavenly gates rotated in a terrifying manner, trying to destroy all the chains of order that were entangling him. Unfortunately, although Yi Xian had opened the 11th gate of heaven, the power of the 11th gate of heaven had not been completely absorbed by Yi Xian under the suppression of chaos heavenly punishment. These chains of order completely ignored the 11 heavenly gates and instantly wrapped around his body. Being entangled by the chains of order was an unparalleled tribulation. Yi Xian's flesh was exploding, and one could faintly see his bones. This caused Yi Xian to let out a furious roar. Primal chaos heavenly punishment, annihilation of body and soul. When this scene appeared before the eyes of the 7 supreme beings, each and every one of them trembled to the extreme. This was the power of the chaos verse, and it was not something that any living being could withstand. At the beginning of chaos, order was born. There were always some existences that the chaos verse didn't tolerate. No matter how powerful those taboo existences were, they wouldn't dare to truly appear in the chaos verse. Even if they did appear, they would restrain their power for fear of attracting chaos tribulation. The so-called chaos tribulation didn't refer to a tribulation. It truly represented the will of the chaos verse, and also meant that one had to fight against it. Therefore, the tribulation it produced was extremely terrifying. For the current Yi Xian, it was truly an unsolvable tribulation. Break! Yi Xian's blood dyed the starry sky. He was roaring ferociously, and his body was glowing. Rays of heaven burial reincarnation were blooming, and the chains of order that wrapped around his body were actually collapsing inch by inch. Emperor! All the cultivators within the 99 heavenly burial palaces cried out in excitement. They could sense Yi Xian's unparalleled strength, and it was enough to excite them all. Bang! The chaos exploded and order crumbled. In the vast starry sky, Yi Xian was like a blazing sun. The chains of order that wrapped around his body shattered with a loud bang. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Xian was bathed in blood. His eyes were terrifyingly red as he panted heavily. The chains of order had caused him great damage, but he had still managed to overcome it. However, Yi Xian wasn't excited at all. He knew that this was only the beginning. If the chaos tribulation was so easy to overcome, even taboo characters wouldn't be so afraid of it. Rumble! As expected, the boundless darkness of the cosmos changed once again. rays of mysterious and unadorned light bloomed, and the vast and mysterious sound of a bell rang out rapidly. Chaos reversal, cosmos reversal. At this moment, the chaotic spacetime seemed to distort, and even time and space were reversing. Furthermore, it was happening to Yi Xian's body. Spacetime reversal. Something extremely terrifying happened. The 11th heavenly gate was reversing, and gradually began to fade. It even showed signs of crumbling, and it gave Yi Xian a sense of extreme weakness. Spacetime freeze. Yi Xian roared in horror. He frantically urged his cultivation to freeze the 11th heavenly gate, but under the great spacetime tribulation, the spacetime profundity he cultivated was useless. Spacetime reversal, the power of chaos. Spacetime wasn't just a force, but one of the greatest laws of the chaotic universe. At this moment, it appeared in the chaos tribulation, causing Yi Xian an unimaginable calamity. Yi Xian's cultivation was regressing, and the 11th heavenly gate was slowly dissipating. An extreme sense of weakness grew in his mind. Samsara. At this critical moment, Yi Xian formed hand seals with both hands and frantically urged the heaven burial art. Rays of samsara halo surrounded him, enveloping him within. Only the profundity of samsara could withstand the chaos tribulation of spacetime. Under Yi Xian's frenzied urging, the 11th heavenly gate rotated again, and then erupted with boundless light, truly fusing with Yi Xian. Break! Yi Xian roared into the starry sky, and the eternal samsara fist blasted out. The samsara fist light that pierced through the chaos was so terrifying that it directly shattered the space-time tribulation into nothingness. What was samsara? Samsara didn't exist in the chaotic universe, and it was even above the various laws. In samsara, all laws were destroyed. Silence, silence, the silence of all things. When Yi Xian broke through the space-time tribulation, the entire starry universe fell silent, but a formless terror quietly grew. Dong dong dong. Like the morning bell and evening drum, like the beginning of the chaos, the primal chaos rang out. Rays of mysterious chaos laws were born in the starry sky, and then they turned into rays of light that gathered together. Buzz. A millstone. A millstone that blotted out the sky. A millstone that killed all things. When all the laws merged together, a black millstone appeared in the boundless starry sky. No laws of heaven, existing forever with the world. This mysterious millstone was boundless, and one couldn't see the end of it. Simple and unadorned patterns appeared on the millstone, and the light that could obliterate all things flickered on the millstone. Rumble. The black millstone rumbled and rotated according to an unchanging law. Streams of murderous and chaotic aura appeared. The surrounding starry sky and the universe were collapsing. It was as if everything would be obliterated by this millstone. Chapter 1725. Obliteration Millstone. Inside the chaos world, Ancient Shadow suddenly rose to his feet. His scarlet eyes trembled, and there was a hint of fear in them. How is this possible? Why would the obliteration millstone appear? Aeon Shadow muttered in shock. He couldn't believe his eyes. And he couldn't believe that Yi Xian had attracted the obliteration millstone. Master, what is that? Gai Tianyuan asked in a trembling voice. Obliteration millstone, obliterating all things. Aeon Shadow said in shock. His scarlet eyes drifted, as if he had fallen into a distant memory. There was a hint of bitterness in his eyes. The obliteration millstone, a product of the chaos. When the chaos universe reaches its end, the obliteration millstone will appear and obliterate all life in the chaos universe until a new chaos universe opens. Aeon Shadow said in a trembling voice. What? Gai Tianyuan was shocked, his face instantly turning pale. No, this chaos universe hasn't reached the 12th period yet. This isn't the real obliteration millstone. It's just a phantom formed by the laws of chaos. Aeon Shadow suddenly raised his head and looked at the obliteration millstone again. The shock in his eyes slowly dissipated. Sure enough, he found that the obliteration millstone was just a phantom. It wasn't a real object. Aeon Shadow breathed a sigh of relief. If the obliteration millstone really appeared, even he would have to be careful. No one knew better than him how terrifying the obliteration millstone was. In the previous Chaos universe, he had experienced the power of the Obliteration Millstone. If it weren't for his inverse character art, he would have died to the Obliteration Millstone. How did he attract the Obliteration Millstone's phantom? Aeon Shadow's eyes flickered. It should be known that the Obliteration Millstone's phantom shouldn't appear in the Chaos Tribulation. Could he really be someone's reincarnation? Aeon Shadow muttered in shock. Rumble. The starry sky collapsed, obliterating all things. The black millstone that blotted out the sky rotated. Streams of obliterating energy descended, even turning this part of the universe into nothingness. Obliteration Millstone? Yi Xian paused for a moment as he gritted his teeth and spat out these 4 words. His eyes revealed a heavy expression that had never been seen before, and there was even a trace of bitter despair. Back then, Aeon Shadow had mentioned the various calamities of the Chaos universe when he was by his side. The Obliteration Millstone was one of the most terrifying of them all. However, Yi Xian didn't expect that the Obliteration Millstone would descend from the Chaos Tribulation. Of course, Yi Xian could sense that it wasn't the Obliteration Millstone, was merely a phantom millstone. However, even if it was just an illusion, it still contained the destructive power of the world-exterminating millstone. This power was enough to obliterate him on the spot. Rumble. The world annihilation millstone rumbled as it rotated. A terrifying light of annihilation flickered on the millstone. Following the sound of primal chaos exploding, the world annihilation millstone charged towards Yi Xian. Bang bang bang. As the Armageddon millstone continued to descend, billions of miles of the chaos cosmos were obliterated. Just the aura that obliterated all things turned countless stars into ashes. The obliteration millstone obliterated everything. This wasn't just for show. Even though it was just a phantom, it wasn't something that Yi Xian could withstand. Crack! Yi Xian bore the brunt of the attack. Before the obliteration millstone could reach him, his body had already begun to crack. Large amounts of blood spurted out, and the 11 heavenly gates shook violently, as if they were about to collapse at any time. Arg! The obliteration millstone locked onto Yi Xian. He was under unimaginable pressure. His tall and straight spine was bent, as if the eternal universe was pressing down on him, trying to crush him completely. Open! Yi Xian raised his hands to the sky and roared ferociously. At this moment, he had sublimated to the extreme and unleashed all his cultivation. He didn't want to die under the obliteration millstone. Rumble! Something terrifying and shocking happened. Yi Xian raised his arms and fearlessly faced the obliteration millstone. He used both his hands to block the obliteration millstone's descent, trying to resist the obliteration millstone's descent. Rumble! The obliteration millstone rumbled as it rotated. The obliteration millstone's terrifying aura that could obliterate everything bloomed. Yi Xian's hands were badly mutilated, and then spread to his entire body at an extremely fast speed. Puff! Puff! Under the obliteration of the world annihilation millstone, Yi Xian let out a mournful roar. However, the flesh and blood all over his body exploded inch by inch. His entire body was covered in blood, causing people to be unable to bear to look at him directly. Puff! Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. Under the obliteration of the world annihilation millstone, his entire body was dispirited to the extreme. The 11 heavenly gates were on the verge of collapse, as if they were about to collapse at any moment. Mr. Emperor Lord. When this scene appeared, Fatso Huang and the others roared miserably. It was because Yi Xian was too miserable at this moment. The obliteration millstone was simply too terrifying. Everyone was certain that even if the strongest of all eternity encountered this tribulation, they would probably die tragically under the obliteration millstone. At this moment, the 7 strongest looked at each other in horror. Just the power released by the obliteration millstone was enough to make them smell the scent of death. The Extreme Love Master said in a trembling voice, "Mister, you must pass through it." "No, I can't die. I absolutely can't die." In the starry sky, Yi Xian was badly mutilated as he roared crazily in his heart. He wanted to shatter the obliteration millstone that was pressing down on him, but he couldn't do it at all. Tribulation transcender technique. In the next moment, Yi Xian roared in grief and indignation. Since he couldn't shatter the obliteration millstone, he would devour its power. Rumble. Black fog filled the sky and the earth. The profound meanings of the tribulation transcender technique and the heaven-devouring demonic art were released to the extreme as they tried to devour the obliteration millstone. Wah! But in the next moment, Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood again. His devouring technique directly dissipated, completely destroyed by the obliteration millstone. The obliteration millstone could obliterate all things. Not only could it obliterate living beings, but it could also obliterate all nomological powers. The so-called devouring technique was naturally useless. Bang! The obliteration millstone continued to fall, and Yi Xian's arms turned into a bloody mist. The terrifying millstone suppressed his body, and with a loud bang, half of his body was obliterated without a trace. Samsara. Rumble. Yi Xian's shattered body recovered once again. The 11 heavenly gates protected his body, but the obliteration millstone was too terrifying. The 11 heavenly gates were shaking violently, and it was obvious that they wouldn't be able to hold on for long. What should I do? What should I do? Yi Xian bitterly resisted the descent of the obliteration millstone, but his heart was already filled with despair, because he couldn't resist this destructive power at all. Calm down. I must calm down. At this critical moment of life and death, Yi Xian constantly reminded himself to calm down. Heaven's secret? Primal chaos heaven's secret? Suddenly, Yi Xian's body and mind trembled, because he'd discovered something that made him extremely pleasantly surprised. Under the obliteration of the obliteration millstone, the primal chaos heaven's secret no longer existed in this starry sky universe, and it was filled with the power of the obliteration millstone. Otherize the future? I can use otherize the future? Yi Xian roared excitedly in his heart. Otherize the future. It was Yi Xian's greatest trump card. However, this trump card had great restrictions and was not tolerated by the primal chaos universe. As long as the primal chaos heaven's secret existed, Yi Xian could not use this method. However, the appearance of the obliteration millstone happened to obliterate everything. Even the primal chaos heaven's secret no longer existed in this starry sky, giving Yi Xian a chance to use otherize the future. Chapter 1726. Rumble. The obliterating millstone spun as it released an aura that could kill all living things. The starry sky and the universe no longer existed. Terrifying black holes were exploding. I can't wait any longer. Yi Xian roared in his heart. If he didn't use future transformation, he would really die under the obliterating millstone. Future transformation. Yi Xian raised his arms to the sky and resisted the obliterating millstone's descent. An ancient roar came from his mouth. Dong dong dong. It was as if the universe was shaking, and all living things were being born. The ancient heavy footsteps could be heard, and a deep shadow appeared. After passing through the ancient and modern world, breaking the boundaries of time and space, the illusory future finally appeared. The past no longer existed, the present couldn't be seen, and the future couldn't be expected. The starry sky was distorted, and the myriad of laws were boundless. The figure walked out of the illusory future, and with his appearance, the entire chaotic world froze. Even the obliterating millstone's rotation slowed down. The future was illusory, but it was also real. Future transformation was an incomplete forbidden heavenly law, and it was unimaginably terrifying. Rumble. Like the heavens and earth, the primal chaos trembled. This future illusion walked towards Yi Xian with large strides. Yi Xian's face also revealed an excited expression. When the future illusion merged with him, an angry roar that could explode the eternal universe sounded out from Yi Xian's mouth. Open for me. Rumble. 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 When Yi Xian merged with the future, his entire body emitted an extremely terrifying light. His originally hunched back was now as straight as a pine tree. His arms supported the obliterating millstone, causing it to rumble. Get lost. Yi Xian roared. He raised one arm and punched the obliterating millstone. The fist radiance that penetrated the chaotic world was so blinding that people couldn't open their eyes. Bang! The fist penetrated the chaos. The fist destroyed the starry sky. The fist was the fusion of Yi Xian's present and future. The fist blasted the obliterating millstone away. I am invincible, sweeping through the ages. At this moment, Yi Xian could be said to be in his strongest state ever. He was terrifying, invincible, and spanned across the universe. The unparalleled power of the heaven burial samsara swept across hundreds of millions of miles of the starry sky, and even affected the entire chaotic world. Rumble! The starry sky was exploding, the stars were falling, and the 5 regions of chaos were trembling. Mountains and rivers were overturning, and mountains and seas were exploding. Even the boundless land sank into a terrifying state. Streams of terrifying underground lava spurted out, causing an unimaginable disaster to the 5 regions of chaos. What a scary Yi Xian! What kind of technique is he using? Could it be that even the chaos heavenly punishment can't kill him? Even though they were millions and millions of miles away from Yi Xian, they could still feel the aura that was being released by Yi Xian right now. It was enough to cause their hearts to tremble. Strong. It was terrifyingly powerful. It was so powerful that it was almost unstoppable. It was so powerful that it was almost comparable to a taboo figure. At this moment, Yi Xian was extremely terrifying. He had completely entered an indescribable state. Even the taboo figures who were secretly watching him were shocked by his strength. What a great technique to transform the future. The chess grandmaster held the black and white chessboard in his hand. Life and death qi revolved around him. He looked at the terrifying light that was being released from Yi Xian's body from afar. His expression was extremely solemn. Breaking through the ancient and modern worlds, reversing time and space, and deducing the future for one's own use. This technique is too heaven-defying. Only a taboo heavenly technique can suppress this technique. The ancient shadow commented solemnly. Transform the future. The taboo figure who walked out of the river of chaos looked at him coldly. Fear flashed across his eyes. Can you transform the past? The taboo figure who walked out of the river of chaos muttered in a trembling voice. There was a hint of fear in his eyes, as if he had thought of something extremely terrifying. The ancestral land of the giant beasts of the starry sky. The ancestor of all beasts was surrounded by death light, as his scarlet eyes flickered slightly. Strong. He is indeed terrifyingly powerful. Unfortunately, he is still a little short of a taboo. This chaos heavenly punishment is not that simple. The ancestor of all beasts muttered in a deep voice. Unparalleled throughout the ages, fearless in the present. Yi Xian stood alone in the vast starry sky, as rays of heaven burial reincarnation appeared one after another. The world annihilation millstone was blasted flying by him. But Yi Xian's expression didn't contain the slightest bit of excitement. Rumble! All of a sudden, the chaos distorted, and the starry sky shattered. The apocalyptic millstone appeared once again. It was not damaged after being sent flying by Yi Xian's punch, and it was impossible for it to dissipate. Although it was only a phantom, and not the real apocalyptic millstone, it was filled with the power of apocalypse. What was the power of apocalypse? Even taboo figures feared the power of apocalypse. When the apocalyptic millstone descended in the previous chaotic universe, even taboo figures had to struggle at death's door to survive. Although the apocalyptic millstone was only a phantom, it was not that easy for Yi Xian to shatter it. Eternal reincarnation, heaven burial extermination. Rumble! Without waiting for the apocalyptic millstone to fall, Yi Xian roared into the starry sky. He took the initiative to attack, and completely shattered the apocalyptic millstone in the starry sky. Boom! The eternal reincarnation fist destroyed everything. It was not affected by the apocalyptic millstone at all. It turned into a reincarnation fist radiance that penetrated through the ages, and bombarded the apocalyptic millstone. Bang! 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 Yi Xian was like a madman, as he constantly hit the apocalyptic millstone until it rose up. The apocalyptic millstone seemed to contain the will of the chaotic universe, as it released an extremely terrifying power of apocalypse. It kept crashing down on Yi Xian. This was a great calamity of life and death. It was a competition of who could kill the other. Although the apocalyptic millstone was not a living creature, The pressure it gave Yi Xian was unprecedentedly strong. Rumble! Rumble! Yi Xian threw out punch after punch. Every punch caused the apocalyptic millstone to rise up continuously. Although the apocalyptic millstone was rotating and constantly pouring down a terrifying power of apocalypse, it could not cause much damage to Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian was too unfathomable. The combination of the present and future pushed him into an extremely terrifying state. Although he was not as strong as a taboo figure, he was much stronger than the strongest throughout the ages. The Emperor Lord is invincible. The Emperor Lord is eternal. The cultivators in Buried Heaven Palace cheered excitedly, because the power Yi Xian displayed made them tremble in fear and respect. Everyone was enjoying the fact that Yi Xian had survived this calamity. From now on, Buried Heaven Palace would reign supreme in the chaotic universe. In the universe's starry sky, Yi Xian's attacks became more and more terrifying and ferocious. He had already cracked the apocalyptic millstone, but the apocalyptic millstone still did not truly disperse. How can this be? Yi Xian was still attacking fiercely, but he frowned as a great sense of uneasiness rose in his heart. No one knew better than him how strong he was now. At this moment, every punch he threw out was so strong that even the strongest of all ancient times couldn't block it. However, after throwing out so many punches, he still couldn't break the obliterating millstone. Chapter 1727. Buzz! All of a sudden, something extremely strange happened. The shattered starry sky and universe froze. The rotating obliteration millstone stopped moving, but an extremely terrifying aura was growing. Huh! Yi Xian was shocked and instantly stopped attacking, because an extremely terrifying aura was attacking him, making Yi Xian extremely uneasy. Roar! It was as if the chaotic universe was enraged, and the heavens were collapsing. The starry sky within millions of miles changed horribly, as a pair of ancient ferocious eyes appeared. A pair of eyes! A pair of ruthless and ferocious eyes. This pair of eyes was devoid of human emotions, and stretched across the starry sky and universe. With the appearance of this pair of eyes, a gaze fell on Yi Xian, and instantly froze Yi Xian. He's dead for sure. The eternal shadow, who was far away in the great desolate world, suddenly stood up. An extremely chaotic aura was released as he looked at Yi Xian from afar. Both of his fists were tightly clenched. This pair of eyes was known as the Eyes of Chaos, and contained the will of chaos. When this pair of eyes appeared, it meant that Yi Xian was dead for sure. Will he show up? The forbidden figure who walked out of the river of chaos was also watching solemnly. However, his gaze was fixed on Yi Xian, and there was a complicated and frightened look in his eyes. Open! Yi Xian was bound by an invisible force. He frantically activated his cultivation to break free, but it was to no avail. Moreover, his cultivation was rapidly dissipating. What is this? Yi Xian roared in shock. Just a single gaze had caused him to be unable to retaliate at all. Moreover, even his future was gradually dissipating. Rumble! The world-exterminating millstone rotated once more. This time, it was even more terrifying than before. The obliterating force that it emitted instantly descended onto Yi Xian's body. Crack! A strange sound was heard, and Yi Xian's body shattered like porcelain. Large amounts of flesh and blood were peeled off, and one could vaguely see his bones. Open! Yi Xian roared crazily. His present and future were merged, and this was his strongest state. If he couldn't even withstand the chaos heavenly punishment in this state, he would really be doomed. What a pity! No matter how unwilling Yi Xian was, the pair of eyes of chaos and the obliteration millstone rendered Yi Xian helpless. The eyes of chaos fixed his cultivation and body, and constantly weakened his future. The obliteration millstone's power skyrocketed, and brought an even more terrifying calamity to Yi Xian. Chaos heavenly punishment taboo retreats. This was absolutely not just empty words. How could it be so easy to overcome a calamity that even a taboo figure would avoid? Arg! Suddenly, an extremely unwilling roar sounded out. The world annihilation millstone had already descended onto Yi Xian's head. His flesh and blood were melting, and his entire body had turned into a skeleton. Other than the soul between his brows roaring crazily, Yi Xian had already suffered an unimaginable death. Annihilate. In the starry sky of the eternal universe, it was as if the sound of primal chaos was being suppressed. The world obliteration millstone poured down an invincible obliterating force, wanting to obliterate Yi Xian's soul. Arg! When the obliterating force acted on Yi Xian's divine soul, Yi Xian's consciousness began to become muddled, accompanied by a pain that was worse than death. If the soul existed, the person would exist. If the soul was destroyed, the person would die. At this moment, Yi Xian's divine soul was suffering a calamity that was much more terrifying than the physical body. If his divine soul was obliterated, he would have to use the life calamity technique to fight for a chance of survival. Otherwise, his body and soul would be destroyed. However, the life calamity technique only had a 50% success rate. Yi Xian had already failed the last time. If he failed again, his soul would really be destroyed. Still not showing up? On the other side, several taboo characters stared fixedly. The moment they had been waiting for had finally arrived. If Yi Xian was truly the taboo of taboo characters, he would definitely undergo a great change in his current predicament. Of course, these taboo characters didn't wish for Yi Xian to be someone's reincarnation, because that would be too terrifying. It also meant that Yi and the others had all been tricked. Thump thump thump. Suddenly, just as all the taboo characters stared fixedly at Yi Xian, a strange sound reverberated throughout the chaotic universe. This sound was like footsteps that trampled on everyone's souls, making it difficult for them to breathe. An extreme sense of terror was born in their hearts. What's that? Suddenly, Aeon Shadow was horrified. He stared fixedly at Yi Xian, his scarlet eyes flickering intensely. Yi Xian had already been reduced to a skeleton. The divine soul between his brows had dimmed and was on the verge of collapse. But an indescribable aura was emanating from the depths of his divine soul. Thump, thump, thump. Yi Xian's divine soul, which was about to be extinguished, pulsed. With each pulsation, the entire starry universe darkened a little. Even the obliterating millstone that obliterated Yi Xian and the pair of chaos words above his head froze. Has it appeared? Is it really going to appear? The taboo characters looked at each other in horror. They were all waiting for something, but the fear in their hearts grew heavier. Rumble. Suddenly, a boundless darkness swallowed the entire chaotic universe. A dark shadow walked out of Yi Xian's divine soul. Heaven and earth froze, and the chaos came to a standstill. Even the thoughts of all living beings began to freeze. Everything in the world stopped moving, and only that faint black figure stood alone in the starry sky. I've reincarnated through the past and present, and stepped into the myriad universe. My body is dead, and my soul is destroyed. Who am I? Who am I? The heavens whispered, and the chaos fell silent. The dark figure stared at the boundless universe, and his voice was filled with grief. Then, he turned into a black light and returned to Yi Xian's divine soul. The legendary person has appeared? Does he really exist? Could it be that the legends since ancient times are true? No, that's impossible. How can such a person exist in the myriad universe? It's fake. It's all fake. The taboo characters roared in shock. No one knew what they were saying, but an indescribable fear grew in their bodies. It was as if they had seen the greatest horror of all time. Boom! The heavens trembled, and the chaos collapsed. The obliterating millstone shattered, and the eye of chaos disappeared. The dark starry sky collapsed, and the so-called chaos heavenly punishment vanished. Who are you? Who are you? Although the chaos heavenly punishment had disappeared, Yi Xian's flesh and blood had already dissipated, and even his divine soul was about to be extinguished. However, he could still feel everything that he had just seen. The dark figure walked out of his divine soul, and it made him tremble and roar. This was because Yi Xian did not want to be anyone's reincarnation. He only believed in himself, and he wanted to be invincible. Unfortunately, no matter how weak Yi Xian roared, the dark figure did not appear again. It was as if everything that had just happened was just a dream. Buzz! Yi Xian's white bones were being destroyed inch by inch, and his weak divine soul began to dissipate. His consciousness sank into darkness, and it was obvious that he was about to die. Although the appearance of the dark figure caused the chaos heavenly punishment to retreat, Yi Xian's death was not fake. At this moment, he was already at the end of his rope, and he was truly on the verge of death. Only the life calamity technique could give him a chance of survival. Eternal dream. Just as Yi Xian was about to die, his indignant roar came from the heavens. He did not use the life calamity technique, but chose the most dangerous eternal dream. Rumble. In the next moment, Yi Xian turned into ashes, completely vanishing from the universe's starry sky. It was as if he did not exist in this world. The Archlord? Sir? When Yi Xian turned into ashes and dissipated into the starry sky, everyone in Burial Heaven Palace was devastated. Fatso Huang and company even cried out loud. What a pity! Yi Xian had already dissipated, and not even a corpse was left behind. He had truly dissipated into the starry sky. He had failed to withstand the punishment of the chaos heavenly punishment. Chapter 1728. The world changed, time changed, the sun and moon alternated, and time rotated. Time was the most ruthless, and it rotated according to the law. No matter if you were a peerless genius, no matter if you were a hero, under the passage of time, you would be drowned in the rolling history. The stars shifted, the mountains turned into the sea moved, and time alternated. Even the vast sea could turn into land, and the sun, moon, and stars would change positions. Under the push of time, everything would disappear. This was a mountain range, an ordinary mountain range. There were green mountains and clear waters, and the vegetation was flourishing. 3 ancient pines rose from the ground, and the air was filled with the fragrance of plants, making people feel refreshed. Goa, there's a spirit herb. A young man and a young woman came out from the bushes. The young woman pointed at a stalk of green grass, and her face showed excitement. It's really a spirit herb? The young man also exclaimed, and the two quickly went forward to check. The young man and woman were dressed plainly, and they were obviously villagers at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, they found the spirit herb and cheered, and they carefully picked it. Suddenly, an arm drilled out of the ground. This immediately frightened the young man and woman to the extreme, and they shrieked. Ah, Goa, there's someone in the soil. The young woman screamed in fear. What kind of demon are you? I, Goa, am not afraid of you. The young man's face was pale, and he held a small knife in his hand. Although he said he was not afraid, his trembling legs had already betrayed his heart. The soil on the ground was soft, and another arm came out. As the 2 arms slowly supported the ground, a person covered in soil came out. Are you a human or a ghost? The young man was terrified. Where am I? A voice like metal rubbing against metal came out. The person's eyes were deep and confused, as if he hadn't spoken for a long time. At this moment, even his voice was very stiff. Goa, he has a shadow, he's alive. The young woman was smart, and she pointed at the person's shadow and reminded. Maybe it was the young man and woman's voices that made the person gradually wake up. His confused eyes gradually became clear, and his gaze fell on the young man and woman. Dream or reality? He looked at the young man and woman in front of him. His voice was hoarse and confused, and he was murmuring in his sleep, as if he was judging something. Eternal dream, enlightenment of all laws. Suddenly, his body trembled, and all the soil on his body fell off. His snow-white hair was like the Milky Way in the 9 heavens. His black clothes fluttered without wind, and a pair of perplexed eyes were terrifying. Rumble. The wind and clouds changed, and the heaven and earth were distorted. A terrifying whirlwind of spiritual energy swept through the entire mountain range, causing the 2 youths to lose their balance and fall to the ground. I'm out. I really walked out of the eternal dream? All of a sudden, his eyes gradually became clear, and the halos of reincarnation flickered in his eyes. The feeling of the vicissitudes of time was born, and an indescribable aura was born from him. Yi Xian. He was none other than Yi Xian, who had perished in chaos heavenly punishment and cast eternal dream. Eternal dream, reincarnation of 10,000 lifetimes. Yi Xian did not know how much time had passed. He had been reincarnated time and time again, roaming the eternal dream. It was almost as if he would never wake up. However, Yi Xian finally woke up. He woke up from the eternal dream. What he saw and heard made Yi Xian clearly sense that he had left the eternal dream and had truly woken up from it. Eternal dream, the vicissitudes of time. This dream was very long, so long that Yi Xian almost forgot who he was. However, it was all in the past now. He finally remembered who he was and returned to this real world once again. What year is it today? Yi Xian looked at the young man and woman with a deep gaze and asked the question in his heart. This was because he felt that he had slept for a very, very long time, so long that he had forgotten the concept of time and how many years had passed. Reincarnation of 10,000 lifetimes, eternal dream. Yi Xian's heart was filled with vicissitudes of loneliness because no one knew what he had experienced. It's the sealed sky calendar now. As for the year and month, we don't know either. The young man carefully replied as he looked at the strange person in front of him. Sealed sky calendar? Yi Xian muttered in his sleep as a look of puzzlement flashed across his eyes. This was because he had never heard of such a calendar. However, Yi Xian could tell that the young man and woman in front of him were only children. They naturally did not know what year and month it was. Can you bring me to meet your parents? Yi Xian asked. Ah. The young man and woman looked at each other, then nodded their heads in a simple manner. A small mountain village. This was the name of the village. The people who lived there were mortals. They worked at sunrise and rested at sunset. They had been farming for generations for a living. Come, little brother. Have a bowl of hot soup to get rid of the cold. In a corner of the village, in a mud house, a burly middle-aged man brought Yi Xian a bowl of hot soup with a simple smile on his face. Thank you. Yi Xian took the bowl of hot soup and took a sip. He had not eaten anything from the mortal world for a long time. As soon as the soup entered his mouth, he became slightly intoxicated. Little brother, where are you from? Why have you come to our small mountain village? The middle-aged man asked curiously. Yi Xian did not know how to answer this question. This made him shake his head slightly. Seeing that Yi Xian was silent, the middle-aged man did not continue to ask. He guessed that Yi Xian must have some difficulties that he could not speak of. Excuse me, what year is it today? Yi Xian put down the hot soup and asked the question in his heart. This was because when he woke up from his dream, he found that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around him was abundant. It was even more abundant than before he underwent his tribulation. Clearly a long time had passed. It's the sealed sky calendar now. The middle-aged man had a strange expression. He did not know why Yi Xian would ask such a question that everyone knew. Hearing the words sealed sky calendar again, Yi Xian frowned slightly. This was the second time he had heard these words. I want to ask about the specific year. Please enlighten me. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man again. Little brother, please wait a moment. The middle-aged man hurriedly returned to the inner room. In a few breaths, he returned with a calendar that recorded the year in his hand. As the middle-aged man flipped through the calendar in his hand, he looked up at Yi Xian and said, It's the 11th Yuanhui now. It's the 483,010,000 year of the sealed sky calendar. The 11th Yuanhui? 483,010,000 years. In the next moment, Yi Xian was stunned on the spot. His expression was already frozen, and he could not believe his ears. If he remembered correctly, there were less than 300 million years until the end of the 10th Yuanhui, when he underwent his tribulation. However, when he woke up again, it was already the 11th Yuanhui, and 483,010,000 years had passed. Chapter 1729. According to this calculation, he had been sleeping in the eternal dream for 700 million years, which could be considered half a Yuanhui period. More than 700 million years? Yi Xian's heart trembled. He had slept in the dream for half a Yuanhui, and he was now in the 11th Yuanhui? Little brother, what's wrong? The middle-aged man asked. Yi Xian tried his best to suppress his emotions and said in a calm voice, Brother, may I ask which supreme ruler is in the 11th Yuanhui? The Lord of Sealing Heaven. Little brother, where did you come from? You haven't even heard of the Lord of the 11th Yuanhui? The middle-aged man asked in surprise. The Lord of Sealing Heaven? Yi Xian muttered to himself. A deep look flashed through his eyes. Is the Lord of the 11th Yuan Hui called Yi Fengtian? Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man and asked. Sure. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, the middle-aged man's expression changed. He hurriedly made a shushing gesture to Yi Xian. Little brother, you're too bold. How can you say the name of the Lord of Sealing Heaven so casually? If the people of the Sacred Hall of Life hear it, even if we're both mortals, we'll be punished. The middle-aged man warned with a trembling voice. That's right. This child actually became the supreme ruler of the 11th Yuan Hui, and even created his own supreme orthodoxy. I really didn't misjudge him. Yi Xian nodded slightly. He was already certain that Yi Fengtian was the supreme ruler of the 11th Yuan Hui. Hearing Yi Xian's disrespectful words again, the middle-aged man sucked in a cold breath and looked at Yi Xian as if he was looking at a madman. Madman? This person must be a madman. At this moment, the middle-aged man was certain that Yi Xian was mentally ill. Otherwise, why would he say such crazy words? Perhaps Yi Xian sensed the middle-aged man's emotions, so he briefly chatted with him. However, he didn't get any useful information. After all, the other party was just a mortal. For him to know what year it was today was already quite good. As for more information, he could only obtain it from cultivators. For example, the burial heaven palace that he had created, as well as the situation of the various utmost powerful beings. How would mortals know about these things? Yi Xian finally bid farewell and left. But before he left behind 2 pills, which could be considered a gift to this mortal family. Central region, startling Feather City. The frightening Feather City covered an area of 1,000,000 miles, and was a small city inhabited by cultivators. Yi Xian left the small mountain village, and entered the frightening Feather City. If he wanted to know the situation of the 11th Ian gathering, a tavern or tea house was undoubtedly the best choice. Even though Yi Xian could go find Yi Xian, and go to the Temple of Life himself, he didn't do so. This was because time could change everything. Even his personal disciple was the same. A total of 700 million years had passed. Half a Yuan Hui had passed. His former disciple had already become one of the most powerful existences in history. He was also the master of the 11th Yuan Hui. He was already a supreme existence. Perhaps he had already forgotten about his master. Moreover, after waking up from the dream of eternity, Yi Xian's temperament was already different from before. He was indifferent to everything, and wasn't in a hurry to meet Yi Fengtian. Cloud Wind Tavern. Yi Xian chose a seat by the window. He casually ordered a few dishes and a pot of spirit wine, and poured himself a drink. Hey, have you heard? The holy son Yao Feng and the holy daughter of Qinglan came to our frightening Feather City. Even our city lord humbly welcomed them. Who are the holy son Yao Feng and the holy daughter of Qinglan? How could they startle our city lord? No way. You don't even know who the holy son Yao Feng and the holy daughter of Qinglan are? They are the holy son and the holy daughter of the Temple of Life. Not to mention our city lord. Even the Tong Tian of the Immortal Realm has to treat them with respect. The conversation at the table attracted Yi Xian's attention. This also made him listen carefully. I heard that the Holy Son and the Holy Daughter are both in the creation realm. This time, they came to frightening Feather City to recruit disciples for the Temple of Life. Sigh, what a pity. With our cultivation, the Temple of Life won't even consider us. How can such a supreme orthodoxy be something we can aspire to? The Lord of Sealed Skies is the only one in history. The Master of Human Tao is his Taoist companion. If we can really join the Temple of Life, it will be a blessing that we can't even cultivate for 3 lifetimes. When Yi Xian heard the words, Master of Human Tao, his expression suddenly changed. He slowly got up and walked towards these cultivators. Who is the Master of Human Tao you speak of? Yi Xian's eyes were deep and profound. The Master of Human Tao is the Master of Human Tao. Who else could it be? Yi Xian's uninvited appearance made these people wary. After all, cultivators often killed each other. Who knew what Yi Xian was up to? I'm asking you the name of the Master of Human Tao. His words were the law. Their souls were stunned. When Yi Xian opened and closed his eyes, These cultivators seemed to have lost their souls. Naturally, they answered whatever Yi Xian asked. After a full incense stick's worth of time, Yi Xian returned to his seat. These cultivators also regained their senses. However, they had already forgotten all their memories and continued drinking and chatting. While Yi Xian slowly poured himself a cup of turbid wine, then drank it all in one gulp. His brows were slightly furrowed as well. According to these people's answers, the master of human Tao was not the master of human Tao he knew. However, Yi Xian was also very familiar with this person, Wan Hongling. Back then, Yi Xian had taught Wan Hongling the boundless secular world technique. Her marriage with Yi Xian was also personally organized by Yi Xian. Back then, Yi Xian had hoped that this girl could inherit the position of master of human Tao. Who would have thought that after such a long time, it would come true? Besides, apart from Wan Hongling inheriting the position of master of human Tao, Yi Xian also obtained a lot of useful information. The Lord of the Extreme Devil was Yi Xian Mo. He had even re-established the Extreme Devil Shrine and became the Lord of the Extreme Devil. However, from these people's answers, Yi Xian learned a few things. When the 11th Aeon began, countless immortal great perfection stage cultivators became half-step sovereigns. A vast massacre followed. This war lasted for 100 million years. Yi Fengtian and Yi Xian Mo fought the most fiercely. They would not stop until one of them was dead. In the end, Yi Fengtian became a sovereign and became the master of the 11th Aeon. However, Yi Xian Mo was not weak either. He attracted the heavenly heart of chaos from the Lord of the Extreme Devil and also took over the position of Extreme Devil. After that, Wan Hongling also succeeded in inheriting the position of master of human Tao. However, the Lord of the Extreme Devil, Yi Xian Mo, and the Lord of the Fengtian sect, Yi Fengtian, were like fire and water. Even though they had both become sovereigns, their orthodoxies were still hostile to each other. As for the other sovereigns, the three eternal immortals, and the Lord of Extreme Love were also veteran sovereigns who rarely showed themselves. The Lord of Destruction was also in seclusion. The Lord of all spirits was a sovereign of the 10th Aeon, and had also been in seclusion for many years. The heavenly palace of all spirits was also in a semi-hidden state. There was one more person, the Lord of the Undying. Yes, the Lord of the Undying. However, this Lord of the Undying was not the one Yi Xian was familiar with. Instead, it was an extremely mysterious person who took over the position of Undying and became the new Lord of the Undying. However, this person's identity had always been a mystery. No one had ever seen his face, let alone know his name. The appearance of the new Lord of the Undying was very strange. No one knew where he came from. However, after Yi Fengtian attained the Tao, this person suddenly became the new Lord of the Undying, and even rebuilt the heavenly palace of all spirits. Chapter 1730. Initially, Yi Xian wanted to ask about the Zongtian Palace, but these cultivators did not know anything about it. It was as if the Zongtian Palace did not exist in this world. This made Yi Xian very confused. When he created the Zongtian Palace, there were countless immortals in his orthodoxy, not to mention some half-step to the strongest. Moreover, Li Taichu and Jun Wushuang were both people who had created their own Tao. Even if they did not become the strongest, they were still half-step to the strongest. With the Tao and Tao that they had comprehended, who could defeat them other than the strongest? Also, Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling were both from the Zongtian Palace. Even if they had created their own orthodoxy, the Zongtian Palace should still exist. It should not have disappeared into thin air. What happened all these years? Yi Xian drank by himself and murmured. He could feel that during the long time that he disappeared, something unknown must have happened. Quick, everyone! Go out and welcome the Holy Son and Holy Daughter of the Holy Palace of Life. Just as Yi Xian was pondering, he saw a cultivator wearing a battle robe barge into the tavern. The roar of a beast shook the heavens, and an auspicious aura filled the sky as it sprinkled down on Feather City. In an instant, the entire tavern was emptied. All the cultivators hurried out of the tavern to welcome the Holy Son and Holy Daughter. Yi Xian frowned slightly, but still got up and walked out of the tavern. He wanted to see what the disciples of the Holy Palace of Life that Yi Fengtian had created looked like. Outside the tavern, the sound of gongs and drums filled the air. At the end of the street, a majestic spiritual beast pulled a jade carriage. The carriage was covered by a bead curtain. One could only vaguely see two figures sitting cross-legged in the carriage. On both sides of the jade carriage, there were 4 maids. The 4 maids held flower baskets in their hands. From time to time, flower petals would rain down, filling the entire Jingyu city with auspicious signs. Jingyu City welcomes the arrival of the Holy Son and Holy Daughter. At the other end of the street, the city lord of Jingyu City led many cultivators to welcome them. As he shouted, a large number of cultivators and mortals knelt down. Like a tsunami, they kowtowed devoutly. On both sides of the street, regardless of whether they were mortals or cultivators, everyone knelt down to welcome them. Even the city lord of Jingyu City was no exception. Facing the arrival of the Holy Son and Holy Daughter of the Shrine of Life, it was a great honor for Jingyu City. Everyone was excited and kept kowtowing to express their respect for the Shrine of Life. Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back, frowning slightly as he watched the scene unfold before him. What a grand formation! Just the arrival of a Holy Son or Holy Daughter caused everyone in the city to kneel and greet them. It seemed that the Church of Life was truly the ruler of the 11th Eon. How dare you? Why don't you kneel in front of our holy sons and holy daughters? Just as Yi Xian was lost in his thoughts, he heard a delicate reprimand. At the same time, several sharp gazes landed on Yi Xian. At this moment, regardless of whether they were mortals or cultivators, everyone had already knelt down. Only Yi Xian stood calmly, which was naturally very abrupt. The 4 maids naturally noticed Yi Xian, and the reprimand just now was directed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian frowned slightly and turned to leave. As an ancestor, how could he kneel to 2 juniors? Wouldn't that be the biggest joke in the world? However, he did not want to cause any trouble and was ready to return to the tavern. Although Yi Xian did not want to cause any trouble, the maids did not intend to let him go. You should be punished for disrespecting the Shrine of Life. Whoosh! A sharp sword light cut through the sky and headed straight for Yi Xian. This made Yi Xian's expression turn cold. It seemed that all supreme orthodoxies were bound to be arrogant and overbearing. Buzz! Before the sword light could reach him, something strange happened. The sword light disappeared into thin air, as if it had never appeared. So vicious at such a young age. Is this what the Shrine of Life taught you? Yi Xian said calmly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the world froze, and a terrifying and mysterious fluctuation spread out. The maid who attacked him turned pale. Under this invisible pressure, she knelt down directly, and blood spurted out of her mouth. When this happened, the 2 people in the jade carriage were surprised. Obviously, the maid's attack did not take down Yi Xian, which shocked them to the core. I didn't expect there to be a master here in the Jingyu City. I am the Yaofeng Holy Son. May I know your name? The beaded curtain of the jade carriage was lifted, and a young man in golden robes walked out of the jade carriage, accompanied by a woman in white. At this moment, both of their eyes fell on Yi Xian. It is indeed the power of life. When Yi Xian's eyes fell on the 2 juniors, he could tell at a glance that they cultivated Yi Fengtian's method and Tao. The power of life in their bodies was extremely majestic. Yi Xian looked at the 2 calmly, which made their faces turn cold. No matter how powerful the other party was, they did not care too much. One had to know that even the Immortal Realm warriors had to be courteous when they saw them, and they had to give face to the Shrine of Life, let alone this unknown cultivator in front of them. The Yaofeng Holy Son and the Qinglan Holy Daughter were proud, because they were disciples of the Shrine of Life, and the Shrine of Life was in charge of the 11th Yuan Hui, who dared to go against the Shrine of Life. My friend, you are powerful. You actually hurt my maid. If you don't give the Shrine of Life an explanation, I'm afraid you won't be able to walk out of this Jingyu City. The Yaofeng Holy Son's face was cold when his maid was hurt. Although he felt that Yi Xian's cultivation was high, he did not care too much. Because no one dared to go against the will of the Shrine of Life. Not to mention that he was a holy son who represented the Shrine of Life. Looking at the arrogant face of the junior in front of him, Yi Xian's eyes flashed with disappointment. Yi Xian did not expect that the strongest orthodoxy, founded by Yi Fengtian, would cultivate such an ignorant and arrogant person. As the saying went, a glimpse of the whole leopard reveals the whole leopard. Yi Xian believed in this saying very much. One could tell what an orthodoxy was like by looking at its disciples. The ignorant and arrogant junior in front of him more or less set off the usual style of the shrine of life. What kind of explanation do you want? Yi Xian asked calmly. I don't want to make things difficult for you. As long as you kneel down and apologize, your disrespect to the shrine of life today will be forgotten. The Yaofeng Holy Sun sneered. Yi Xian smiled, but his smile was very cold. He was laughing at the ignorance of this junior in front of him. It has always been people who kneel to me. When have I ever kneeled to anyone? Didn't Yi Fengtian teach you to respect the strong? Yi Xian said lightly. How dare you? How dare you call the heavenly master by his name? The expressions of the holy son Yaofeng and the holy daughter of the Azure Mist changed before they angrily reprimanded Yi Xian. The two of them didn't think that Yi Xian would dare to directly call out the name of the Lord of the Sealed Heavens. Rumble. Azure light filled the sky. The two holy sons and holy daughters unleashed a terrifying power. They were obviously going to attack Yi Xian. Ha ha ha. I've searched high and low for you, only to find you by chance. Let's see who can save you today. Suddenly, before the two of them attacked, laughter came from afar. The clouds in the sky darkened, and an extremely terrifying demonic light rolled over. Chapter 1731. Oh no, it's the extreme demonic temple. The expressions of the two holy sons and holy daughters instantly changed. They glared hatefully at Yi Xian, then soared into the sky to greet the demonic cloud. However, the two of them did not know that they had one foot in the coffin. Otherwise, if they really attacked Yi Xian, they would have been killed. Extreme demonic temple? Yi Xian mumbled to himself. The next moment, he mysteriously disappeared from frightening Feather City. In the vast sky, thousands of miles of sky. On one side, demonic clouds billowed and evil aura filled the sky. On the other side, green light shook the sky and life aura surged. It was as if heaven and earth were divided into two halves. In the demonic clouds, a young man in black stood alone. The terrifying demonic light rolled around his body. His cold face was filled with murderous intent. On the other side, Saint Sun Yaofeng and Saintess Qinglan looked solemn. There was fear in their eyes. Li Changtian, do you really want to go against us? Saint Sun Yaofeng said coldly. What a joke. Who do you think you are? You will die here today. The young man in black said cruelly. Li Changtian, although our orthodoxies have been enemies for many years, we have no enmity with you. Why do you have to force us? Saintess Qinglan frowned. Cut the crap. Lao Tzu has been chasing you for hundreds of years. Let's see where you can escape to this time. The young man in black smiled cruelly. He was in the Tao querying realm, and could kill the two of them mercilessly. Naturally, he did not want to waste time with the life shrine. Rumble. The demonic clouds billowed and evil aura filled the sky. The young man in black did not attack. Once he attacked, he used a killing skill, and went straight for the two of them. Do you really think we are afraid of you? The two of them shouted and joined forces to fight against the young man in black. Each of them used a life skill, and instantly clashed with the young man in black. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared quietly. He looked at the three of them calmly, but there was a deep look in his eyes. Clearly, the two sides were fighting over orthodoxy. This black-robed junior was from the extreme devil shrine, which gave Yi Xian some ideas. Ha ha ha, Li Changtian, you've been tricked. Let's see who will kill who this time. Suddenly, a dazzling green light shot up into the sky. A terrifying aura burst out from Saint Sun Yaofeng's hand and charged at the black-clothed youth. Boom! In the next moment, the black-clothed young man, who had the upper hand, had his heart pierced by the green light, followed by a mournful roar. Blood splattered across the sky as the black-clothed youth frantically retreated. However, the bloody hole in his chest was extremely terrifying. It was obvious that this attack was enough to take his life. Heavenly Spirit Stab. You have the Heavenly Spirit Stinger? Wow! The young man in black spat out blood. The bloody hole in his chest was extremely terrifying. He looked at Saint Sun Yaofeng in despair and unwillingness. His eyes were filled with endless hatred and resentment. Ha ha ha. Qinglan Holy Maiden laughed and said, Li Changtian, you didn't expect this, did you? Did you really think that the two of us were hiding from you? If we didn't show our weakness to make you lower your guard, how could we kill you today? Li Changtian, you can only blame yourself for being arrogant. So what if you're in the Dao querying realm? You've been hit by the heavenly spirit stinger. Today is the day you die. Saint Sun Yaofeng laughed wildly. Damn it. The black-clothed youth kept retreating. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He felt his life force dissipating. Waves of dizziness attacked him, and the despair in his eyes intensified. He clearly knew that after being hit by the heavenly spirit stinger, and having his heart pierced, there was no chance for him to survive. Go to hell! Saint Sun Yaofeng and Qinglan Holy Maiden roared. The heavenly spirit stinger in their hands swung at the black-clothed youth again. Apparently, they wanted to kill him on the spot. My life is over. The black-clothed youth roared in despair. Although he was unwilling to die here, he had no power to fight back against the two. Freeze! Heaven and earth froze and everything stopped. Just as the black-clothed youth was waiting for his death, an ancient voice sounded. What happened next stunned the black-clothed youth. Time seemed to have stopped and space seemed to have frozen. Saint Sun Yaofeng and Qinglan Holy Maiden were rooted to the spot. The heavenly spirit stinger in their hands had lost its power. Buzz! Yi Xian appeared beside the black-clothed youth silently. He looked at the two juniors indifferently. His eyes were as deep as an ancient lake. You again? Yi Xian's appearance caused Saint Sun Yaofeng's face to change drastically. He wanted to swing the heavenly spirit stinger in his hands, but he realized in horror that he could not move his body at all. Who are you? Saint Sun Yaofeng roared in horror. Who am I? Yi Xian smiled faintly and did not answer the question. Arrogant and ignorant. Letting you live in this world is a waste of air. Boom. The moment the words were spoken, everything was destroyed. Yi Xian's eyes slightly moved. He saw the Yaofeng holy sun transform into a rain of blood that filled the sky, and his body and soul were completely destroyed. You dare to kill someone from the sacred palace of life? Such a scene caused the Qinglan Holy Maiden to scream in fear. A great sense of terror arose in her heart, and she even scolded Yi Xian in a threatening manner. Go back and tell Yi Fengtian that if he knows someone called Yi Xian, ask him to come to the extreme devil shrine personally. Yi Xian said indifferently. He picked up the black-clothed youth and disappeared into the sky. Yi Xian. The Saintess of Qinglan was surprised, because she had never heard of this name. However, the death of Saint Sun Yaofeng was so strange that she did not dare to stay any longer. She turned into a ray of light and returned to the fane of life. On the top of the nameless mountain, Buzz! Yi Xian sent a ray of light into the black-clothed youth's body. The youth's pierced heart was recovering rapidly. In just 3 breaths, it was as good as new. Senior, thank you for saving my life. The next moment, the black-clothed youth knelt on the ground. His face was full of awe. He kept kowtowing to Yi Xian to express his gratitude. The black-clothed youth was an extremely proud person. However, he was in awe of the strong. The Saint Sun Yaofeng's strange death made him realize that the person in front of him was absolutely a horrifying strong person. Moreover, his heart was pierced by the heavenly spirit thorn. He should have been dead for sure. However, he was cured by this mysterious strong person. This made him extremely shocked. He also deeply understood that he must have met an extremely powerful person. He was afraid that the person in front of him was at the level of a sect master. Is Demon Yi Xian in the extreme devil shrine? Yi Xian stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the sea of clouds on the mountain peak. His voice was inexplicably deep. Ah! Hearing Yi Xian's words, the black-clothed youth's expression changed. This was because Yi Xian had called the demon lord by his name. This was a great disrespect. However, the black-clothed youth was very smart. He did not scold Yi Xian like Saint Sun Yaofeng did. Instead, he said hesitantly, the demon lord is indeed in the extreme devil shrine. Senior, do you know him? Of course I know him. We are very close. Therefore, I want you to take me to see him. Yi Xian said as he turned his head slightly. Yes, senior. The black-clothed youth rolled his eyes. He already felt that Yi Xian had a great background. Naturally, he did not dare to disobey. Chapter 1732. Above the dome, demonic light filled the sky. A heavenly gate stood in the middle of the clouds. Through the gate, one could vaguely see the palaces and pavilions within. There were even demonic lights flashing within. The demonic aura was vast and boundless. The rebuilt extreme demonic heavenly palace was even more majestic than before. This also proved that Yi Xian had brought the extreme demonic heavenly palace to new heights after becoming an immortal. Senior, this is the extreme demonic heavenly palace. Please wait for a moment. I'll inform them and we can enter. Li Changtian bowed. All right. Yi Xian slowly nodded his head. His eyes slightly rotated, and all of the void entered his eyes. The world was in his heart, and he immediately felt a familiar aura. Yi Xian. Yi Xian nodded slightly. He had already noticed that Yi Xian was in the extreme demonic heavenly palace, cultivating with his legs crossed. Yi Xian smiled. 700 million years had passed, and Yi Xian had indeed become an immortal. His extreme demonic power was even stronger than the extreme demonic lord in the past. Senior, my master invites you in. Just as Yi Xian was deep in thought, Li Changtian quickly walked over, followed by several white-haired old men. One of them had a dignified and solemn expression, and the aura of the immortal realm was slowly being released. Obviously, this person should be Li Changtian's master, and also the current extreme demonic palace master. However, his cultivation base was too weak in Yi Xian's eyes. I heard that you saved my disciple. Please come to the extreme demonic sect for a chat. The extreme demonic palace master smiled kindly, sizing up Yi Xian. He wanted to see Yi Xian's cultivation base. However, what surprised the extreme demonic palace master was that he couldn't see through Yi Xian's cultivation base. It was as if Yi Xian was just air, as if he didn't exist in this world. Half step to immortal? The extreme demonic palace master was shocked. He was at the peak of immortal realm. If he couldn't see through Yi Xian's cultivation base, he must be a half step to immortal. Ask Yi Xuanma to come out and see me. Yi Xian was not the least bit interested in the extreme demon palace master before him. He strode into the divine gate, as if he were returning to his own home, and headed straight for Yi Xian. Fellow Taoist, what do you mean by this? The expression of the Supreme Demon Hall Master immediately changed. Yi Xian had directly called out the Demon Lord's name, which was a great taboo. He immediately blocked Yi Xian's path, and a large number of cultivators surrounded Yi Xian. Yi Xuanma. Yi Xian did not move, but his voice resounded throughout the entire extreme demonic heavenly palace. As his voice rang out, Yi Xian, who was cultivating in the extreme demonic heavenly palace, suddenly opened his eyes. An extremely terrifying aura burst forth from him. Boom! Yi Xuanma stood up. When the demonic light was in a mess, the Dharma of the demon shadow appeared behind him. This was because he felt a terrifying aura. This aura actually made his soul tremble to the extreme. Which ultimate being had arrived? A huge question appeared in Yi Xuanma's mind. Even though this aura was obscure, it still made his soul tremble. This proved that the person who had arrived was undoubtedly an ultimate being. The gates of the heavenly palace opened. Yi Xian walked out with the Dharma of the demon shadow, and shifted towards Yi Xian's direction. Rumble! The extreme demonic heavenly palace was filled with a violent aura. The demonic light that filled the entire sky was boiling, and an ultimate being's aura was pouring down. When Yi Xian appeared in the sky, everyone in the extreme demonic heavenly palace was so shocked that they immediately kowtowed. Greetings to our Lord who lives forever. The cheers were like a tsunami as they kowtowed piously. No one had expected that the demon lord, who had not appeared for a long time, would appear today. Who is calling my name? Yi Xian stood alone in the sky as his ultimate being's aura filled the entire sky. The demon shadow behind him was even more towering, displaying an ultimate being's aura. Senior, quickly pay your respects to the demon lord. Li Changtian was trembling all over. He discreetly tugged at Yi Xian's trousers, his eyes filled with nervousness. Unfortunately, Yi Xian ignored his little gesture and looked at Yi Xian with a smile. After so many years, Yi Xian had changed a lot. Not only did he have an ultimate being's aura, but he also gave off a sense of supremacy. Disciple, we haven't seen each other for so many years. Don't you recognize your master? Yi Xian smiled faintly. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. When Yi Xian spoke, everyone in the extreme demonic heavenly palace gasped. No one had expected Yi Xian to say something so crazy. Was he courting death? They had never heard of the demon lord having a master. This person actually dared to call the demon lord his disciple. If he was not an idiot, then he must be tired of living. Yi Xian's face instantly turned cold. He had gone from the 10th period to the 11th period, and had even become the lord of the extreme demonic heavenly palace. No one had ever dared to be so presumptuous to him and call him his disciple. Yi Xian's cold eyes fell directly on Yi Xian. However, the next moment he frowned. A trace of doubt flashed across his sinister eyes, and the demonic light on his body seemed to have stagnated. Perhaps too much time had passed. After all, it had been more than 700 million years since the 10th period to the 11th period. Yi Xian felt that Yi Xian's appearance was very familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not recall where. Looking at Yi Xian's confused expression, Yi Xian could vaguely guess that 700 million years had passed. Time could make people forget a lot of things. His traitorous disciple must have almost forgotten his existence. My good disciple, you really don't remember your master? Yi Xian soared into the sky and instantly appeared beside Yi Xian. A strange smile appeared on his face as he sized up this traitorous disciple of his. You are you. It would have been better if Yi Xian did not smile. However, his smile immediately caused Yi Xian's expression to change drastically. The memories hidden in his mind surged up violently. Back then, yes, it was the 10th period. It was such a strange smile that had become his greatest nightmare. Even in his dreams, his heart trembled, and he was terrified. Ever since he became the strongest person in history, his heart had been filled with an invincible spirit. Only then did he manage to suppress the smile that once terrified him. However, when Yi Xian saw that nightmare smile again, the distant and terrifying memories once again assaulted him. So, he had never forgotten this smile. He had never forgotten the person who brought him endless nightmares and terror. All of a sudden, Yi Xian's face gradually became clearer in his eyes. The memories that he tried his best to forget surged up violently and gradually matched with the person in front of him. Yi Xian? Boom! The next moment, Yi Xian screamed in horror. The demonic light that filled the sky and the earth became chaotic. He finally remembered who the owner of this face was. How could it be? How could he still be alive? It couldn't be. It couldn't be. Yi Xian was horrified. He kept retreating. His face had turned pale. He no longer had the demeanor of the strongest person in history. My good disciple, how dare you call your master by his name? Yi Xian teased with a smile. Chapter 1733. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. He has already died in the 10th Yuan Hui. The chaotic divine punishment has already destroyed his body and soul. Yi Xuanmo retreated in fear. He looked at Yi Xian with fear. He could not believe that Yi Xian would appear in front of him alive. At this moment, everyone in the extreme demon heavenly palace was dumbfounded. They simply couldn't believe their eyes. The devil lord, who was like the heavens and earth in their hearts, was actually trembling in fear at this moment. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they definitely wouldn't believe such a ridiculous thing. Why aren't you kneeling when you see your master? Yi Xian said calmly. Disciple. Disciple. Greets master. The fear of Yi Xian made Yi Xuanma lose his sense of propriety. Under Yi Xian's aggressive gaze, Yi Xuanma's knees went soft, and he was about to kowtow to Yi Xian. All of a sudden, Yi Xuanma's expression changed. His bent knees returned to normal. The pale and fearful expression also gradually disappeared. The next moment, Yi Xuanma's spine was as straight as the vicissitudes of life. His nervous and fearful emotions were also disappearing. Then, he regained the majesty and dignity that a supreme expert should have. What kind of joke is this? Previously, he was indeed scared to death of Yi Xian. He even lived in the nightmares that Yi Xian brought to him. However, it was different now. He had already become a supreme expert, and was no longer the ant that Yi Xian could manipulate. He already had the ability to go against Yi Xian. How could he kneel to Yi Xian? Yi Xian, you are actually still alive. This is really surprising. Yi Xuanma said with dignity. He was no longer humble and humble. Instead, he looked down at Yi Xian with a condescending attitude. At this moment, Yi Xuanma's majesty increased greatly. His face started to redden. His eyes were filled with excitement and pride. He had waited for this day for far too long. He wanted to face Yi Xian head-on. He would no longer wag his tail and beg before Yi Xian like a dog. This was because he was now the strongest in history. He had the qualifications to fight against Yi Xian. Disciple, it seems that your wings have hardened. You even dare to talk back to your master. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled into a strange smile, as he spoke in a slightly mocking tone. Yi Xian, don't you dare laugh in front of me. So what if you've come back to life? The 11th Eon is no longer your era. This lord is the supreme ruler of heaven and earth. Who do you think you are? Yi Xian scolded loudly. He had endless fear towards Yi Xian's smile, and even now, it had become extremely strong. However, when he saw Yi Xian smile at him, the shadow that had been on his mind for many years had always been pressing down on him. You're really a rebellious disciple. I didn't misjudge you back then. Yi Xian let out a long sigh. Back then you forced my mother to her death. You even schemed against me. I've never forgotten this grudge. Since you dare to appear in front of me today, don't even think about leaving. Yi Xian went berserk. Tongtian's earth-shaking supreme demonic light surged. The terrifying demonic shadow roared furiously. Child, you've grown up. You're not obedient anymore. Then let me see how much you've grown after so many years. Yi Xian smiled faintly. As a master, he definitely had to reprimand a rebellious disciple who didn't listen to him. Yi Xian, you bastard. Do you really think I'm the same as before? Today, I'm the Lord of Supreme Demonic Light. Who do you think you are? Today I'll destroy your body and soul. I'll let you know this Lord's true strength. Rumble. Tongtian pierced through the ground. Supreme Demonic Light shook the sky. Yi Xian transformed into the strongest of all. His supreme demonic power was even more terrifying than the Lord of Supreme Demonic Light. When he raised his 5 fingers to the sky, it was as if he was holding up the heavens. That terrifying might cause the entire Supreme Demonic Shrine to tremble. I'll kill you, bastard. I'll get rid of the nightmare in my heart. Rumble. It was fine if Yi Xian didn't make a move, but when he did, he used his full strength, because he knew that Yi Xian was very strong. However, he was confident that he could kill Yi Xian. After all, he was much stronger than the former Lord of the Extreme Devil. Not bad. You've improved a little. Looking at his rebellious disciple, Yi Xian nodded approvingly. However, there wasn't any fluctuation in his eyes. It was just praise. Kill. Yi Xian raised his 5 fingers to the sky and turned into a demonic palm that covered the sky. With a mighty force that could destroy everything, he slammed it toward Yi Xian. Yi Xian, you bastard. Today I, Yi Xianimo, will kill you. Yi Xianimo laughed maniacally. This attack contained all of his cultivation. Even if it couldn't kill Yi Xian, it would definitely severely injure him. Rebellious disciple. How dare you try to kill your master? Yi Xian frowned slightly. He didn't seem to do anything. He just pointed a finger at the sky. The next moment, something extremely terrifying happened. Rumble. The laws collapsed. Heaven and earth became empty. This finger was simple and unadorned. This finger caused heaven and earth to collapse. This finger caused reincarnation to bury and destroy. Bang! Yi Xianmo's powerful technique dissipated. The demonic palm that covered the sky turned into ashes. It didn't even release a ripple. How is this possible? Yi Xianmo roared in shock. He had used all of his cultivation for this attack. Moreover, it was a supreme technique that he had comprehended himself. It could be said that it was his trump card. I don't believe it. Yi Xian let out a furious roar. His entire body was in a state of insanity. His entire body emitted a demonic light that caused the heavens and earth to tremble. His entire body transformed into an extremely powerful demonic light that charged towards Yi Xian. Rebellious disciple. Yi Xian's face turned cold. He raised his 5 fingers and slapped down on Yi Xian. Bang. This palm was simple and unadorned. One couldn't tell how powerful it was. However, it sent Yi Xian flying. Barf. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. He had suffered an unparalleled calamity. His body was cracking, as if it had been smashed by the heavens. Brat, how dare you disobey your master? If I don't teach you a lesson today, you won't know how to respect your master. Rumble. Heaven and earth were turned upside down. Heaven and earth were in chaos. One by one, the heavenly gates opened behind Yi Xian. A total of 12 heavenly gates spanned across heaven and earth. The 12 heavenly gates were like the entire chaotic universe. The mysterious power that they released shattered the laws of heaven and earth. The dream of eternity and eternity. This was definitely not just empty talk. Yi Xian had reincarnated for 10,000 lifetimes in the eternal dream. He had also experienced a period of 700 million years. No one knew what he had experienced. At this moment, Yi Xian's cultivation was simply terrifying. Eternal strongest? It was just a joke in front of Yi Xian. He could send Yi Xian flying with one slap, and kill him with one hand. With all 12 heavenly gates, he had already surpassed the eternal strongest. He wasn't afraid even when facing taboo characters. Even if he couldn't defeat them, he would be invincible. Of course, in terms of cultivation, Yi Xian wasn't as good as taboo characters. However, with what he had experienced in the eternal dream, Yi Xian wasn't afraid even when facing taboo characters. He even dared to fight them. The eternal dream was the most dangerous taboo skill that Yi Xian had obtained. Although it wasn't as powerful as taboo heavenly techniques, it was still more powerful than ordinary taboo skills. Only Yi Xian knew how terrifying it was. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward. The 12 heavenly gates rotated behind him. He was like the eternal universe, charging towards Yi Xian with a crushing force. Chapter 1734. Bam! Yi Xian slapped Yi Xuanma's face and sent him flying. Half of his face swelled up and blood spurted out. And this was only because Yi Xian had shown mercy. Bam! Yi Xian slapped Yi Xuanma again. Yi Xuanma suffered another blow. 5 bloody fingerprints appeared on the other half of his face. Boom! What extreme demonic power! What omnipotent body! After 2 consecutive slaps from Yi Xian, Yi Xuanma was bathed in blood. The so-called omnipotent body disappeared without a trace. Silence! Silence! A deathly silence. Everyone in the extreme demonic shrine was dumbfounded. They stared blankly at Yi Xian, beating the demon lord in their hearts. They felt as if they had fallen into a nightmare that they would never wake up from. What kind of joke is this? Beating up an omnipotent? Are you kidding me? At this moment, everyone's worldview was collapsing. They could not believe what they were seeing. An omnipotent was invincible. Who could beat up an omnipotent like this? Am I dreaming? No way? Is this an illusion? A large number of cultivators were whispering in fear. Even now, they could not believe that such a ridiculous thing could happen. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Just when everyone was speechless, Yi Xuanma, who was being beaten up, roared with hatred. He fought back at Yi Xian with all his might. However, his omnipotent technique was useless against Yi Xian. Instead, Yi Xian kept slapping him. Traitor, it seems like you want to die. Boom! Yi Xian's expression was ice cold. He took a step forward, and it was as if the eternal universe was pressing down. He slapped Yi Xian until his entire body was bathed in blood. His entire body was shattered, and he directly fell from the sky, smashing fiercely onto the ground. However, this was not the end. Yi Xian stepped on the air, and appeared in front of Yi Xuanma. Before Yi Xuanma could struggle to get up, Yi Xian smiled cruelly. He stepped on Yi Xuanma's head, and crushed it with his foot. Bam! Yi Xian's foot stepped on his head. Yi Xuanma roared in grief and indignation. He wanted to get up and fight with Yi Xian again. However, Yi Xian's foot had pushed half of his body into the ground. No matter how hard he tried, he could not get up and fight with Yi Xian. Suppressing chaos, 12 gates of heaven. What was unparalleled? What was dominating the world? At this moment, Yi Xian fully expressed the meaning of these two sentences. He was so powerful that even the omnipotent of eternity was no match for him. Traitor! Yi Xian stomped on the ground with his right foot and pushed Yi Xuanma's head into the ground again. Yi Xian was cold and emotionless. There was no emotion in his eyes. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Do I have to live in the nightmares you gave me forever? At this moment, Yi Xuanma cried bitterly. He was extremely indignant. He had endured for a full Yuan Hui to become the omnipotent of eternity. He had thought that he was fearless and could disperse all the nightmares that Yi Xian gave him. He even dared to fight with Yi Xian and wanted to defeat Yi Xian. However, he failed in the end. His dream was completely shattered. The endless nightmares that Yi Xian gave him came again. He would never be able to defeat Yi Xian. He would have to live in the shadow of Yi Xian forever. Seems like you are tired of living, traitor. You even dare to disobey your master. Since that's the case, I'll send you on your way. Boom. Yi Xian lifted Yi Xuanma into the air and pressed his fingers on the top of his head. The terrifying light of reincarnation flickered, as if it would take Yi Xuanma's life in the next moment. No one wanted to die, especially Yi Xuanma. He had become the omnipotent of eternity. He was respected by all living beings. If he died, all of this would disappear. Fear, endless fear, rushed toward Yi Xuanma at this moment. The great terror of life and death finally woke him up completely. Master, I was wrong. I was wrong. Please spare my life. Master, please spare my life. At this moment, Yi Xuanma put down all his omnipotent attitude. He became extremely humble in front of Yi Xian again. He even begged Yi Xian loudly. Humph. Yi Xian snorted and threw Yi Xuanma to the ground. Yi Xuanma quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Xian. Disciple Yi Xuanma greets my master. Please forgive me for my foolishness earlier. Yi Xuanma kowtowed again and again. He finally realized that even though he was the omnipotent, he was still as humble as a dog in front of Yi Xian. He dared to disobey Yi Xian's will. The only outcome for him was death. What are you guys looking at? Hurry up and pay your respects to your grandmaster. Yi Xuanma suddenly turned around and yelled at the people of the extreme demonic heavenly palace. This woke them up, and they quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Xian. At least you know what's good for you. I'll spare your life today. Come with me. Yi Xian said indifferently. He did not kill Yi Xuanma in the end. After all, he only wanted to teach this traitor a lesson. He would not really kill him. Yi Xian strolled into the extreme demonic heavenly palace. Yi Xuanma quickly got up and followed behind. He was as humble as a dog, and no longer had the demeanor of an omnipotent. This also shocked the cultivators of the extreme demonic heavenly palace. They could not help but speculate about Yi Xian's background. The Tongtian tree pierced the ground, and the divine tree reached the sky. A divine tree that pierced through heaven and earth took root in the vast land. Its branches and leaves blotted out the sky and blotted out the sun. This divine tree was so huge that one could not see the end of it. Just the branches alone stretched out for millions of miles. From time to time, one could even see people passing by the divine tree. The Life Shrine. This was the Life Shrine. It was also the strongest orthodoxy that Yi Fengtian had created. It ruled over the 11th Yuan Hui. What? Ya Feng was killed. The Life Shrine Master was furious. He looked at the Holy Lady of Qinglan in disbelief. After all, Yao Feng was his disciple. Who dares to be so bold as to kill someone of the Life Shrine? The Life Shrine Master roared in hatred. He said that his name is Yi Xian. The Holy Lady of Qinglan said in a trembling voice. Yi Xian. The Life Shrine Master frowned. He had never heard of this name. He then said with a murderous intent. No matter who this Yi Xian is, he dares to kill a disciple of the Life Shrine. He is an enemy of the Life Shrine. If I don't kill him, where will the dignity of the Life Shrine go? Men! The Life Shrine Master roared and summoned 8 elders. They were all in the immortal realm. Obviously, They were going to issue a decree to hunt down this murderer called Yi Xian. The 11th Yuanhui was the ruler of the life shrine. It was the immortal realm. If someone dared to kill a disciple of the life shrine, that person would die without a doubt. What was the strongest orthodoxy? What was the ruler of the world? If they allowed an outsider to kill their disciple, wouldn't they become the laughingstock of the world? Where was the dignity of the strongest orthodoxy? Where was the face of the life shrine? Chapter 1735. Hall Master, I don't know if I should say something. Looking at the furious life hall master, the Qinglan holy maiden said cautiously, "Speak." The life hall master frowned. The Qinglan holy maiden quickly said, "I noticed that this person's cultivation is Tongtian. He's definitely not a simple person and what?" The life hall master said impatiently. The holy maiden of Qinglan gritted her teeth and finally said, "Before this person left, he left behind a message for this disciple to return to the Temple of Life and tell the Heavenly Lord if he knew someone called Yi Xian." Nonsense, who does he think he is? How dare he say something like that? The life hall master was furious. What else did he say? The life hall master asked. He called the heaven master by his name. I feel that his identity is not ordinary. He even asked me to tell the heaven master that if he knows someone called Yi Xian, he should go to the extreme demonic shrine personally. The Qinglan holy maiden said with a trembling voice. How dare he call the heaven master by his name? He must be from the extreme demonic shrine. These bastards are getting more and more presumptuous. The life hall master said angrily. Men, gather all the disciples above the 3rd level of the Tao querying realm. This time, I will go to the extreme demonic shrine personally to seek justice, the life hall master ordered. Hall master, please calm down. I feel that this matter is not trivial. It's better to report it to the heaven master first. What if the heaven master really knows someone called Yi Xian? The Qinglan holy maiden said nervously. For some reason, ever since she met Yi Xian, the Qinglan holy maiden felt that Yi Xian had a great background. Her heart was trembling. The trembling in her heart wasn't because of Yi Xian's cultivation, but because she felt a kind of temperament from Yi Xian's body. She'd only seen this kind of temperament from the Heavenly Lord, and it should be the so-called invincible spirit. Report to the Heaven Master? The Life Temple Lord was startled, and hesitation appeared on his face. After all, the Sealing Heaven Lord had been in seclusion for many years, and everything in the Life Temple had been left to him to manage. He didn't know if the Heavenly Lord would blame him for disturbing his seclusion. However, the Life Hall Master still nodded. Just as the Saintess of Qinglan had said, what if the Heaven Master really knew the other party? Heaven Sealing God Palace. Yi Fengtian was wearing a green robe. Green light shone around him. Boundless life energy circled around him. When he breathed, life energy bloomed around him. Even the air around him was filled with auspicious flowers. Disciple requests an audience with the Heaven Master. I have something to report to the Heaven Master. Yi Fengtian slowly opened his eyes when he heard the voice of the Hall of Life's Hall Master. After a yuan hui, he had become calm and composed. He even faintly radiated the invincible spirit of a cultivator who had achieved enlightenment. Come in. Rumble. The gate of the heavenly palace opened. The Life Hall leader quickly walked in with the Virgin of Qinglan. They then knelt before Yi Fengtian in reverence. What is it? Yi Fengtian asked. Heaven Master, do you know someone called Yi Xian? The Life Hall leader didn't dare to waste time. He directly said Yi Xian's name while secretly observing Yi Fengtian's expression. Yi Xian. When this unfamiliar name entered his ears, Yi Fengtian was a little confused. However, after 3 breaths of time, his expression suddenly froze. Boom! It was as if chaotic thunder had exploded. It was as if a vast river of stars had crashed down. Yi Fengtian's originally calm expression instantly turned into one of shock. Even the life energy around him became chaotic. Where did you hear this name from? Boom! Yi Fengtian completely lost his composure. He took a step forward and pressed down on the Life Hall leader's shoulder. His supreme Dharma eyes flashed with a terrifying light. Ah! The Life Hall leader was scared stiff. He had never seen the Heaven Master so shocked. Even when he fought with the Supreme Devil Lord, he didn't show such a shocked expression. Heaven Master, please listen to me slowly. The Life Hall leader didn't dare to delay. He quickly explained everything. Then, he knelt on the ground and didn't dare to raise his head, because Yi Fengtian's aura was already extremely chaotic. Even the entire heaven-sealing divine palace was trembling. Let me ask you, is this person called Yi Xian the person in this painting? Buzz. Yi Fengtian flipped his hand, and a yellowed painting appeared. The person in the painting was indeed Yi Xian. Yes, it is him. It is indeed this person. The Holy Maiden of Qinglan quickly replied. Dang dang dang. In the next moment, something that shocked the Life Hall leader and the Holy Maiden of Qinglan happened. He's still alive? So he's really still alive? Yi Fengtian was so shocked that he took 3 steps back. There was an extremely complicated look in his eyes. Then he became lifeless and speechless. His eyes began to blur as the memories hidden in his mind surged. Heaven Master. What happened to you? The Life Hall leader asked tentatively. Perhaps the Life Hall leader's words had awakened him. Yi Fengtian tried his best to calm down and said calmly, Where is he? Heaven Master, he said that if you still recognize him, you should go to the extreme demonic shrine in person. The Life Hall leader quickly replied. He's in the extreme demonic shrine? Yi Fengtian murmured. Then he smiled bitterly and murmured. Yes, how could I forget that Yi Xian Mo is also his disciple? Heaven Master, you really know this person? The Life Hall leader asked tentatively. How could I not know him? Yi Fengtian shook his head bitterly and said, He is my teacher. When Yi Fengtian finished speaking, the two of them were completely dumbfounded. Yi Fengtian's words had shocked them to the core. He's your teacher? The Life Hall leader trembled. Just a moment ago, he wanted to send someone to kill Yi Xian. He did not expect him to have such a terrifying background. Not only is he my teacher, but the master of human Tao is also his disciple. Even Yi Xian Mo, my enemy, is also his disciple. Yi Fengtian smiled bitterly. Dumbfounded. The Life Hall leader and the Qinglan Holy Maiden were completely dumbfounded. If they were only shocked before, now they felt like they had lost their souls. What kind of joke was this? The 3 strongest teachers? How could there be such a terrifying existence in the chaotic universe? Heaven Master, then you? The Life Hall leader hesitated. It's been more than 700 million years, right? Yi Fengtian was in a daze. His eyes were extremely complicated. He said, What will come will come. As his disciple, I naturally have to go and pay my respects to him. Send my decree to the Human Tao Shrine. Tell the Master of Human Tao that our teacher has returned. Tell her to come with me to the extreme demonic shrine, to pay him a visit. Yi Fengtian calmed his trembling heart and passed down the decree. The Life Hall leader and the Qinglan Holy Maiden hurriedly accepted the order and left. Teacher, you shouldn't have shown up. Watching the Life Hall leader leave, Yi Fengtian whispered bitterly. His eyes were filled with hesitation and complicated emotions. Obviously, something had happened to him in the past 700 million years. The extreme demonic heavenly palace. Yi Xian leaned lazily on the throne. Yi Xian Mo knelt at his feet. His face was filled with reverence and devotion. How long has it been? More than 700 million years. We meet again, teacher and disciple. Yi Xian said lazily. His eyes were slightly narrowed. He seemed to be talking to himself, but when Yi Xian Mo heard it, he shuddered. Chapter 1736. Your disciple is unfilial and has disobeyed Master. Please punish me, Master. Yi Xuanma hurriedly kowtowed and begged for forgiveness. Yi Xian smiled. His smile was very kind. He even helped Yi Xuanma up and pulled him to sit beside him. Xuanma, you don't have to be so courteous with me. Actually, I know that you have always hated me and wished to kill me, Yi Xian said with a smile. Your disciple wouldn't dare. Yi Xuanma trembled all over. Sitting beside Yi Xian, his hair stood on end. He hurriedly got up and kowtowed to Yi Xian. Come. Don't be nervous. Let's sit down and have a chat. After all, you are now an omnipotent expert. How did you become a kowtowing worm? Yi Xian kept comforting Yi Xuanma. This made Yi Xuanma break out in cold sweat. He forced a smile, but he was cursing Yi Xian in his heart for not killing him even after the chaos heavenly punishment. Instead, he appeared before him alive. This made him lose all his dignity as an omnipotent expert. Although Yi Xuanma was cursing Yi Xian in his heart, he did not dare to show any disrespect. Instead, he appeared extremely humble, as though he was really an obedient disciple. Xuanma, I was the one who gave you this name. Now that you have become an omnipotent expert, I am very gratified, Yi Xian said with a smile. If not for Master's nurturing, your disciple would not have become an omnipotent expert. Your disciple has always wanted to repay Master's kindness. Unfortunately, Master went missing after the chaos heavenly punishment. Your disciple has no way to repay your kindness, and can't sleep at night. Yi Xuanma pretended to be sorrowful. All right, I know that you are very filial. Yi Xian patted Yi Xuanma's shoulder affectionately, as though they were really close like father and son. Tell me, what happened in the past 700 million years after I underwent the heavenly punishment? Where is Jintian Palace now? Yi Xian said calmly. Jintian Palace. Yi Xuanma's face trembled slightly, and a complicated look flashed across his eyes. Master, listen to your disciple slowly. Yi Xuanma calmed himself down and hurriedly recounted what had happened in the past 700 million years. It turned out that the entire chaotic world did not change much after Yi Xian passed the chaos heavenly punishment. Although Jintian Palace had lost its master, the extreme love and space-time master, and Yi Xian's good relationship. After all, Jintian Palace was extremely tyrannical, and the other omnipotent orthodoxies. Moreover, there were still half-step supreme experts and two powerful generals, Li Taichu and Jun Wushuang. Fatty Huang and Gu Beichen were in charge of many things in Jintian Palace. Although Yi Xian was no longer around, Jintian Palace was still growing in an orderly manner, and Yi Xian and Wan Hongling's cultivation was also increasing day by day. Everyone was looking forward to Yi Xian's return. After all, Yi Xian was an invincible existence in their hearts. No one thought that Yi Xian would really pass away, and even the other omnipotent experts had this suspicion. Therefore, Jintian Palace still dominated the chaotic world, and could be called the most powerful orthodoxy. However, as time passed, Yi Xian still had not returned even when the 10th period was about to end. Finally, some discussions about Yi Xian's death began to appear in Jintian Palace, and internal strife began to occur in Jintian Palace. In the chaotic world, it fully demonstrated the concept of the strong being respected. The first to bear the brunt were Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen. Until the end of the 10th period, the two of them had just opened the 9th gate of heaven. In the chaotic world, this kind of cultivation was indeed a strong one. But it was nothing in Jintian Palace. There were as many peak immortal realm experts as there were hairs on a cow, and half-step omnipotent experts were not uncommon. Everyone had been listening to the two of them, because of Yi Xian's existence. Now that Yi Xian had passed away, this kind of drawback had indeed appeared. Many people began to obey Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen's orders. If it were not for Li Taichu and Jun Wushuang's suppression, there would have been a riot. Moreover, as the 10th period was about to end, many immortal realm experts in Jintian Palace had cultivated to the complete realm, and were all preparing for the 11th period to start fighting for the position of the strongest. During this period, Jintian Palace fell apart. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen left disheartened. The entire Jintian Palace was divided into several factions, and from time to time, there would be battles over some small matters. Finally, when the 10th Aeon Gathering ended, and the 11th Aeon Gathering began, an unprecedented war began. The entire Jintian Palace completely fell apart, and the 11th period started a monstrous massacre. Those who were qualified to fight for the position of the strongest came out one after another, and it could be said that the battle was earth-shattering. How tempting was the position of the strongest! When the 11th period started, Yi Fengtian and the others all became half-step omnipotent experts, and a cruel internal battle began. Li Taichu, Jun Wushuang, Just these two alone had the potential to be the strongest, and they were also heaven-defying geniuses who walked their own path. In the battle for the position of the strongest, these two people had a cruel battle with Yi Fengtian, but they were all defeated by Yi Fengtian. Even Li Taichu's sixth sword of the six annihilations could not defeat Yi Fengtian. Jun Wushuang, on the other hand, was still defeated by Wan Hongling, even though he had mastered the extreme purple heavenly energy. In addition to these few people fighting for the position of the strongest, many great cultivators in Jintian Palace became half-step omnipotent experts and started a cruel battle. And this was just the internal battle of Jintian Palace. It completely disintegrated Jintian Palace, and the orthodoxy that Yi Xian personally created no longer existed. The disintegration of Jintian Palace was just the beginning. Some people who wanted to fight for the position of the strongest also came out one after another, and the entire chaotic world was filled with endless battles. This battle lasted for 100 million years, and in the end, Yi Fengtian defeated all the geniuses and became the strongest in the world. Only then did this cruel dispute of 100 million years end. Since then, all the people in Jintian Palace either died or were injured, and there were even some who were disheartened and went into seclusion in the mountains. The name of Jintian Palace was no longer known in the world. The two strongest generals, Li Taichu and Jun Wushuang, also disappeared without a trace after they failed to fight for the position of the strongest. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen did not participate in this battle at all, and no one knew where they were. What happened next was much simpler. After Yi Fengtian achieved Tao, he was given the title of Fengtian Lord. He created the strongest orthodoxy in the world, the Fengtian Palace of Life. The purpose of the orthodoxy was the idea of equality in the face of life, and it was respected by all living beings in the chaotic world. As for Yi Xuanma, he naturally knew that Yi Fengtian was Yi Xian's disciple. In terms of relationship, Yi Fengtian was his junior brother. However, this junior brother was very hateful. Before he achieved Tao, he always went against Yi Xuanma. After all, Yi Xuanma walked the path of the extreme devil, and he believed in killing decisively. Yi Fengtian walked the path of life, and he believed in the equality of all things and the value of life. Before the two of them achieved Tao, they had many battles, but no one could do anything to the other. After Yi Fengtian achieved Tao, Yi Xuanma did not want to be left behind. He merged with the path of the extreme devil, and attracted the heart of chaos of the extreme devil lord, taking over the position of the extreme devil lord. Chapter 1737. However, Wan Hongling had also taken over the position of human Tao. Moreover, she and Yi Fengtian were originally husband and wife. Because of this, Yi Xuanma had suffered a lot over the years. Yi Xuanma was only one person. Naturally, it was impossible for him to fight against the two of them. Moreover, just Yi Fengtian alone was enough to give Yi Xuanma a headache. Logically speaking, the two of them were both supreme beings. It would be difficult to determine who was stronger. However, Yi Fengtian was a cultivator of the current era. With the support of the entire chaotic universe, he was naturally invincible. Yi Xuanma was not his opponent at all. This was because the 11th Aeon was Yi Fengtian's era, not Yi Xuanma's. After all, he had only taken over the position of the Lord of the Extreme Demon. He was not a cultivator of the current era. Master, it's not that I'm speaking ill of Yi Fengtian. Ever since he achieved his Tao, he has been spreading nonsense about everyone being equal before life. He also advocates that all things are equal, and that he does not like killing. Moreover, as your disciple, he did not rebuild Jintian Palace. This shows that he does not respect you at all. Yi Xuanma pretended to be angry. Oh, what do you mean? Hearing Yi Xuanma's narration, Yi Xian asked indifferently, Master, you are wise. That Yi Fengtian has received your teachings, but he is extremely close to the primal chaos and fate. There's no need to mention the primal chaos master, but the master of fate has a grudge as deep as the ocean with you. As your disciple, Yi Fengtian is on good terms with fate. Although I hold a grudge against you, I will never forget master's kindness. No matter what, Yi Fengtian is still my junior brother. As his senior brother, I only taught him a few words, but he actually attacked me. Master, please help me. Yi Xuanma pretended to be wronged. Hearing Yi Xuanma's narration, Yi Xian's expression did not change. He naturally knew that Yi Xuanma was exaggerating. However, Yi Xian also understood one thing. Although Yi Xianmo was adding oil and vinegar to slander Yi Fengtian, there was a certain amount of water involved. However, Yi Xianmo didn't dare to make things up. In front of life, everyone is equal? Yi Xian murmured. Then he smiled. This disciple of his was really honest. His heart was pure and kind back then. The path of life he walked was indeed suitable for his heart. It seemed that after countless years, Yi Fengtian must have changed a lot after achieving his Tao. He must have established his own supreme Tao heart. Master, you have to punish Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling. They have two supreme beings of their sect. But they have never remembered you. Even if they did not rebuild Jintian Palace, they should have built a monument for you, right? Yi Xuanma continued to exaggerate. Yi Xian smiled and said, Dark demon, after so many years, I've never seen you erect a monument for me. Could it be that you don't have me in your heart? How would I dare to forget Master's kindness? It's just that you killed the previous lord of the Supreme Demon back then. As the successor of the Supreme Demon, if I were to build a monument for you, I would be criticized by others. Please forgive me, Master. Yi Xuanma pretended to be sorrowful. All right, Master knows that you are the most filial. It's good that you have such thoughts. Also, I have told the disciples of the Sacred Hall of Life to tell your junior brother that I am back. Maybe your junior brother is on his way here. Yi Xian said indifferently. Ah, Yi Fengtian is coming? Yi Xuanma's expression changed slightly. Then, he looked at Yi Xian seriously and said, Master, I have to remind you that Yi Fengtian is different now. He is a cultivator of the current era. If he doesn't recognize you as his master, I am afraid. What are you afraid of? Yi Xian smiled gently and said, Are you afraid that he will disobey me, or that he won't recognize me as his master? If he really doesn't recognize me as his master, isn't that what you want? If you join hands with him, you might be able to kill me. Won't that make you feel better? I don't dare. Yi Xuanma was so scared that he hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed. Since the battle with Yi Xian, and he was beaten up by Yi Xian, he fully understood that he was weak and pitiful in front of Yi Xian, even if he wanted to take revenge. All right, you and I are reunited. This is a happy occasion. Master will stay here for a few days and wait for your junior brother to come, Yi Xian said. Master, you can stay for as long as you want. However, I have a request. Yi Xuanma rolled his eyes and said, What's the matter? Yi Xian asked. Master, you are wise. Although Jintian Palace no longer exists, there are many old officials who have gone into seclusion. As long as you raise your arm and call for help, these people will definitely reappear. Jintian Palace will also reappear in the world. I am not talented, but I am willing to do this for you. I also want to restore the glory of Jintian Palace. Yi Xuanma kowtowed and said, Let me think about it. Yi Xian did not agree to Yi Xuanma's request. He could naturally see through Yi Xuanma's thoughts. Yi Xuanma only wanted to use his name to summon some Tongtian powerhouses of Jintian Palace. After all, when he was still around, Jintian Palace was at its peak. There were countless Immortal Realm cultivators. Moreover, since the 11th Yuan Hui, many of them had become half-step omnipotent. If he could gather these old people, they would immediately form the most terrifying orthodoxy. Yi Xuanma knew very well that Yi Xian rarely participated in the management of orthodoxies. As an omnipotent, he could naturally lead these Tongtian powerhouses. This matter would not only please Yi Xian, but also help him. It was a good thing to kill two birds with one stone. Yi Xuanma naturally would not let go of this opportunity. However, Yi Xian had his own thoughts. When Jintian Palace fell apart, Fatso Huang and the others went into seclusion. This time, he had returned, and his thoughts of rebuilding Jintian Palace had already faded. After all, with his current cultivation, rebuilding Jintian Palace was not important to him. This was because the omnipotent of eternity was just SOSO in his eyes. His vision was not limited to the disputes of orthodoxies. Moreover, Yi Xian did not want Fatso Huang and the others to be involved in the disputes again. It was better to live a carefree life in seclusion. As for the reunion of old friends, Yi Xian would naturally look for them after everything was settled. Master has one more thing to ask you, Yi Xian said. Master, please go ahead. Yi Xuanma hurriedly said. Who is the current Lord of Immortality? Have you seen him before? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. Lord of Immortality? Yi Xuanma was stunned, and a look of confusion appeared on his face. He then shook his head and said, Master, I'm sorry, but after Yi Fengtian attained Tao, Wan Hongling and I also became omnipotent. Originally, the Lord of Immortality was killed by you, and the position of omnipotent was lacking. However, not many years later, someone took over the Undying Heaven Lord's position. This disciple has seen this person before. However, this person always wears a devil mask. Even this disciple has never seen his true appearance. Oh! Yi Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. He remembered very clearly that back then, 7 great experts surrounded the Lord of Immortality and completely destroyed his body and soul. At that time, he doubted whether the Lord of Immortality could be resurrected. Unfortunately, in the end, he waited for a long time, but the Lord of Immortality did not appear. At this moment, he was very suspicious that the Lord of Immortality now was the Lord of Immortality of the past. Chapter 1738. Perhaps he had sensed the doubts in Yi Xian's mind. Yi Xuanmo replied in a deep voice. Master, your disciple can guarantee that this person is definitely not the Undying Heaven Lord of the past. Even though he also cultivates the power of nirvana and wears a mask all year round, his aura is completely different from the Undying Heaven Lord of the past. Your disciple can guarantee that he is definitely not the Undying Heaven Lord of the past. No matter what, Yi Xuanma was one of the strongest in history. His senses could not be wrong. Hearing Yi Xuanma's words, Yi Xian nodded his head slowly. He knew that this Undying Heaven Lord might not be the same person from the past. But Yi Xuanma hesitated. But what? Yi Xian's eyes flickered. He could sense that Yi Xuanma had something to say. I don't know if it's just your disciple's imagination. Even though this Undying Heaven Lord is always wearing a mask, your disciple still has a sense of familiarity with him. It's as though I've seen him somewhere before. Yi Xuanma said doubtfully. Familiarity. Yi Xian's brows twitched as he squinted his eyes. Just this single sentence from Yi Xian was enough to make Yi Xian think of many things. For Yi Xuanma to feel a sense of familiarity, it meant that he might have seen this Undying Heaven Lord before. And if Yi Xuanma had seen him before, he should have seen him before as well. But who could this person be? This question appeared in Yi Xian's mind. Somehow, he could sense that this new Undying Heaven Lord might be someone he was familiar with as well. Rumble. Before Yi Xian could even think about it, 2 extremely horrifying auras came from the outside world. This caused Yi Xian's thoughts to turn back, and Yi Xuanma to be even more shocked. Master, Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling are here. Yi Xuanma was way too familiar with the 2 of them. Just by their auras alone, he knew who they were. He could even sense that they were heading towards the extreme demonic palace. Yes. Yi Xian nodded his head slowly. As the senior brother, you should act like one. Go and welcome them here to meet me. Yes, master. Yi Xuanma did not dare to be careless. He strode out of the heavenly palace of the extreme demonic heaven, but there was a hint of gloating in his eyes. In fact, there was one thing that Yi Xian had not told Yi Xian, and that was that Yi Fengtian was walking the great Tao of life. His path was completely different from Yi Xian's. Perhaps even Yi Xian, his master, might not recognize him. The outside world. Junior brother Fengtian, junior sister Hongling. The 2 of you really came. Yi Xuanma strode toward the 2 of them. Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling frowned, but they did not say anything. After all, the 3 of them had the same master, and Yi Xuanma could indeed be called their eldest senior brother. Is master really with you? Yi Fengtian, who was dressed in white, was surrounded by the power of life. His expression was solemn. Of course. Master ordered me to take you two to see him. I'm sure junior brother and junior sister must miss Master very much after not seeing him for so many years, right? Yi Xuanma sneered. Yi Xuanma, don't try to be mysterious. If I remember correctly, you're the one who hates Master the most, aren't you? Wan Hongling was dressed in red. Since she became the master of human Tao, she was no longer a young girl. Instead, she had a faint aura of human Tao. Junior sister, don't accuse a good person. I've always respected Master. I'm not like someone who says she's filial but secretly makes enemies with Master. Yi Xuanma sneered. Yi Xuanma, I don't want to make things difficult for you today. Take me to Master, Yi Fengtian said coldly. All right, come with me if you dare. Yi Xuanma sneered. He beckoned the two of them and walked toward the heavenly palace of the extreme demonic. Along the way, the entire heavenly palace of the extreme demonic was shocked. Everyone knew that the Lord of the extreme demonic and the Lord of Fengtian were enemies. It could be said that they would not rest until one of them was dead. However, today they were walking together. Moreover, there was a human Tao master with them. Many people in the extreme demonic palace already knew that Yi Xuanma was Yi Xian's disciple. Now that they saw the two supreme masters arriving in person, they were even more shocked. Could these two supreme masters be related to the great ancestor Yi Xian? Could it be? Could these two supreme masters be the disciples of the great ancestor Yi Xian? When this shocking rumor appeared, everyone in the extreme demonic palace was shocked. However, no one dared to go to the heavenly palace of the extreme demonic to peek. However, this rumor began to spread. At the heavenly palace of the extreme demonic, Yi Xian leaned lazily on the Supreme Master's throne. He rested his chin on one hand and narrowed his eyes, looking at the entrance of the heavenly palace of the extreme demonic. Thud, thud, thud. Following a series of footsteps, the three Supreme Masters entered the heavenly palace at the same time. When Yi Fengtian looked up, Yi Xian's face was already reflected in his eyes. In that instant, he was in a trance. Time seemed to have stopped. Space seemed to have frozen. At this moment, Yi Fengtian's body was stiff. He was rooted to the spot. It was not only Yi Fengtian. Beside him, Wan Hongling was the same. Her beautiful eyes were extremely complicated. She did not dare to look at Yi Xian's eyes. What's wrong? Yi Xuanma's lips curled up. He said with a hint of mockery, Junior brothers and sisters, have you forgotten the basic respect for your master? As soon as Yi Xuanma finished speaking, Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling came back to their senses. Yi Fengtian's expression was complicated. However, he still walked toward Yi Xian. Wan Hongling did not dare to be slow. She followed closely behind him. Disciple Yi Fengtian greets Master. Disciple Wan Hongling greets Master. At this moment, Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling directly knelt down. They even solemnly kowtowed 3 times to Yi Xian. Yi Xuanma looked at the two kowtowing to Yi Xian. He frowned slightly. Originally, according to his guess, these two would not give in so easily. He did not expect them to acknowledge Yi Xian as their master. This was not the result he wanted to see. However, although Yi Xuanma was disappointed, he did not want to sow discord. After all, Yi Xian was right in front of him. If he wanted to do something, it would only backfire. Good, good, good. The two of you did not disappoint me. Both of you have become supreme masters. Rise, both of you. Yi Xian was slightly gratified. Looking at the two children of the past becoming supreme masters, Yi Xian was happy. After all, these two were cultivated by him. To be able to become supreme masters, Yi Xian also felt proud. However, who was Yi Xian? From the moment Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling entered here, he clearly noticed that there was a hint of heaviness in their eyes. They did not have the kind of admiration that they used to have for him. However, people would change. Moreover, the two children of the past had become supreme masters. They were different from before. Yi Xian could understand. In Yi Xian's belief, as long as his disciples did not betray him, everything would be fine. However, if someone really dared to betray him, he could only be merciless. Heaven and earth would kill all traitors. Even the disciples that he valued were no exception. In terms of ruthlessness, if Yi Xian said that he was number 1, no one would dare to say that they were number 2. Along the way, he had even killed his childhood sweetheart with his own hands. For the sake of his cultivation, he even killed the moon fairy, let alone his so-called disciples. Chapter 1739. In this world, Yi Xian only considered Liu Bai as his family. Fatso Huang and Gu Beichen were half of his family. After all, ever since Yi Xian was young, he no longer had any family or friends. He had also seen through the evilness of people's hearts. Master, I thought you had died in the chaos divine punishment. I didn't expect you to survive. I'm really happy for you, Yi Fengtian said sincerely. Master's old bones are still tough. Although the chaos divine punishment is terrifying, it can't take my life. The person who can take my life hasn't been born yet, Yi Xian said with a smile. Master's cultivation is exceedingly high. We should have known, Wan Hongling interjected. Of course. Master will always be master. I, Yi Xian Mo, am willing to stay by Master's side forever, unlike some people who are friends with Master's enemies, Yi Xian Mo said coldly. Yi Xian Mo, I don't want to bicker with you today. I don't want to fight with you either. I will explain my situation to Master. You better stop trying to drive a wedge between us. Yi Fengtian scolded Yi Xian Mo angrily. Drive a wedge between us? Yi Xian Mo snorted. Since you dare to do it, why don't you dare to admit it? Don't forget that I am your senior brother. Is this how you talk to your senior brother? What kind of senior brother are you? If Master wasn't here today, do you think Fengtian and I would have come? Wan Hongling retorted. Master, did you see that? They have no respect for their elders. Yi Xian Mo's face turned red. He complained to Yi Xian. All right, stop arguing. The 3 of you are all my disciples. So why are you acting like enemies when you meet? If outsiders were to see you, wouldn't they laugh at me, Yi Xian, for being unable to teach you? Yi Xian frowned. Master, please calm down. The 3 of them hurriedly stopped their quarrel. Now is not the time to be hostile to each other. After all, Yi Xian was still here. Master, please come to the life shrine. I have already arranged a banquet to welcome you back. From now on, Hongling and I will be filial to you and make up for all the years you have taught us, Yi Fengtian said solemnly as he bowed. That's right, Master. You should return with us. Right now, Fengtian is the leader of the 11th Yuan Hui. With him around, no one will be your enemy. Wan Hongling also advised. No, Master still has his own matters to attend to. Now that I can see that you all have become the strongest, Master is also very gratified. Yi Xian shook his head and refused. Master, what do you plan to do next? Yi Fengtian's expression was complicated, but he still asked this question. First kill fate, then destroy devourer. Your master still has to settle an old score with chaos, and settle some karma with these utmost powerful beings. Yi Xian said calmly. Master is invincible. Your disciple is willing to follow by your side and serve Master like a dog. Ever since he saw Yi Xian's invincible cultivation, Yi Xuanma no longer dared to have any killing intent towards Yi Xian. At this moment, he was even more flattering towards Yi Xian. However, at this moment Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling's expressions were also heavy. They did not express their stance like Yi Xuanma. This also made Yi Xian look at them calmly. Naturally, he could feel the changes in the two. Why, junior brother Fengtian, junior sister Hongling, are you not willing to help Master? Yi Xuanma was very smart. How could he let go of this opportunity? He directly attacked the two of them. Master, your disciple has something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. Yi Fengtian ignored Yi Xuanma. His expression was solemn and respectful. He even bowed towards Yi Xian. Speak. Yi Xian said calmly. Yi Fengtian took a deep breath and finally opened his mouth. Master, ever since I achieved the Tao of life, I have experienced the difficulties of all living things. I know better than anyone how precious life is. If you really go and seek revenge from those powerful cultivators, you will definitely make the world suffer. Your disciple is here to beg you, Master. Please let go of the past grudges and follow me back to the Temple of Life. From now on, I will be by your side forever. I will be filial to you with Hongling. After Yi Fengtian finished speaking, he directly knelt down and solemnly kowtowed to Yi Xian 3 times. Master, please let go of the past grudges. Wan Hongling also knelt down and begged like Yi Fengtian. Let go of the past grudges? Looking at the 2 disciples begging on their knees, Yi Xian murmured. Then he smiled. However, his smile was very, very cold. You 2 get up. Yi Xian said lightly. Master, you agree? Yi Fengtian was surprised. Fengtian, do you still remember what I taught you? Yi Xian looked at Yi Fengtian indifferently and said, The Tao of heaven is merciless. It treats all living things like straw dogs. The Tao of heaven is merciless. It buries the souls of all living things. The 6 desires are merciless. The world is heartless. If I don't kill people, they will kill me. Back then, I was lucky enough to escape from their hands many times. You 2 want me to let go of the past grudges, but when did they ever let me go? Yi Xian said indifferently. But master, in front of life, everyone is equal. If you really start a war, the 5 regions of chaos will suffer. Billions of living things will be destroyed, Yi Fengtian begged. In front of life, everyone is equal? Nonsense. Bang! Yi Xian slammed the table and stood up. He looked at Yi Fengtian with a cold expression and said, Let me tell you something. In this world, there has never been such a laughable saying like, everyone is equal. The strong are like mountains, the weak are like dogs. Survival of the fittest. The so-called rules are set by the strong. The weak can only obey the rules set by the strong. It's like a child from a rich family and a child from a poor family. They are born unequal. What is the meaning of life is equal? The weak are like ants, the strong are like the nobility of the heavens. Why don't you go to the mortal world and take a look at how the rich and powerful bully the poor and destitute common people? Life and death, the strong are revered. My good disciple, have you forgotten the tribulation transcender technique I taught you? Didn't you use this technique to devour the cultivation of the weak to strengthen yourself? In front of life, everyone is equal. Don't you think this is the biggest joke? Yi Xian scolded Yi Fengtian, completely dismissing the idea of life is equal. Yi Fengtian was stunned. He wanted to refute Yi Xian's words, but when the words came to his mouth, he didn't know what to say. Yi Fengtian didn't dare to look at Yi Xian's eyes and said in a trembling voice, Fine. Even if what master said is reasonable, as the master of the 11th Yuan Hui, and a person who has achieved the Tao in this world, I will not allow you to start a war. Fengtian, you've grown up. So, you want to become my enemy? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. A cold light flashed through his eyes. Chapter 1740. I wouldn't dare. Yi Fengtian kowtowed and said, Master, I am indebted to you for imparting your teachings to me. I would never dare to make an enemy out of you. However, I am grateful for the goodness of the heavens, so I implore you to let go of your grudges and stop killing. Return peace and prosperity to all living beings, so that all living beings will be spared from suffering. Ha! Yi Xian smiled, but his smile was cold. His disciple knew best that Yi Fengtian walked the path of life. Yi Xian had expected him to say something like that. However, Yi Xian's path was the opposite of his. In Yi Xian's eyes, the path of life was ridiculous. What if I don't agree? Yi Xian said, clasping his hands behind his back. If master doesn't agree, then disciple can only be unreasonable. Disciple will bring master back to the temple of life and serve by master's side forever. Yi Fengtian's eyes burned. He finally raised his head to look at Yi Xian. His eyes flashed with unwavering determination. Although Yi Fengtian's words were very reserved, the meaning was clear. If Yi Xian wasn't willing to let go of his grudge, then he could only fight him. Wan Hongling, what about you? Yi Xian smiled as he raised his eyes to look at Wan Hongling. Fengtian is my husband. I have to follow his wishes. I can only be unfilial. But I still hope you can change your mind. Wan Hongling bit her lips. Good. Yi Xian clapped his hands and laughed. It's been more than 700 million years. You've really grown up. Now you know how to oppose me. Since that's the case, let me see how much you've improved over the years. Boom. After Yi Xian finished speaking, his expression was ice cold. With a wave of his sleeve, the world shifted, and the few of them instantly disappeared from the Supreme Devil Heavenly Palace. When they reappeared, they were already hundreds of millions of kilometers away in the vast sky. The clouds and wind were changing in the vast sky. Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling's expressions were complicated. Yi Xian clasped his hands behind his back and looked at them indifferently. As for Yi Xian, he looked around. No one knew what he was thinking. Xianemo, this is a great opportunity for you. Didn't you want to kill me? Now you're working with your 2 juniors. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yi Xian smiled. To be honest, Yi Xuanma's heart was restless. He naturally knew that this was an excellent opportunity. With the 3 of them working together, and Yi Fengtian being a cultivator, they might really be able to kill Yi Xian. However, just as this thought arose in Yi Xian's mind, he raised his head to look at Yi Xian, and saw the strange smile on Yi Xian's face. His heart fiercely trembled for a moment, and he instantly dispersed this thought. Are you kidding me? Yi Xian instantly calmed down. Yi Xian's beating of him was still vivid in his mind. Moreover, Yi Xian was his nightmare, a shadow that he could never erase. How could he dare to fight Yi Xian? Moreover, Yi Xianemo was very sure that even if he really chose to join forces with Yi Fengtian and the others, he might not be able to kill Yi Xian. It was even more likely that he would die at Yi Xian's hands. Teacher's kindness to Xianemo is as heavy as a mountain. How could disciple disobey his teacher? Yi Xian's eyes turned as he hurriedly bowed towards Yi Xian. You are indeed my good disciple. Yi Xian nodded. Master, don't force me in Hongling. We never wanted to be enemies with you. We only hope that you can let go of your grudges. As long as you let go of your grudges, we are willing to stay by your side forever and be filial to you. At this moment, Yi Fengtian was still begging. He really didn't want to fight with Yi Xian, because he always respected Yi Xian. Without Yi Xian, he wouldn't be where he was today. People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. I can train the strongest, and I can also destroy you with my own hands. Let me see how strong my 2 disciples are after all these years, Yi Xian said. Master, don't force me. Rumble. Green light filled the sky. Life was boundless. Yi Fengtian screamed in agony. The power of a cultivator suddenly erupted. Everything within 100 million miles was shaking. Master, I am unfilial. Swish. 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 Red clouds filled the sky. Wan Hongling was also releasing her power. Strands of karma filled the sky. Unfilial disciple, Yi Xian said. Facing the power of his 2 disciples, Yi Xian didn't care at all. He could teach them, and he could also destroy them. Now that his 2 disciples were his enemies, Yi Xian's heart was filled with murderous intent. He was considering whether he should kill them or not. Master, I'm sorry. Boom. One had to admit that Yi Fengtian was indeed terrifying. He was a cultivator who walked his own path. His life force was earth-shattering. With one palm, the sky was collapsing. Master, I'm sorry. Swish. The karma red lines that filled the sky were densely packed, causing one to feel boundless fear. The terrifying karma energy wrapped around Yi Xian. The 2 supreme experts attacking at the same time did indeed have a terrifying might that shook the heavens and the earth. Showing off in front of an expert. Rumble. Terrifying gates opened behind Yi Xian. There were a total of 12 gates that had existed since the beginning of time. They rotated behind Yi Xian. Boom. Yi Xian slapped out with his palm. His 5 fingers were as heavy as the heavens. With just a single strike, he shattered Yi Fengtian's most powerful technique into pieces. But it was not over yet. Yi Xian grabbed at the karma strands that were attacking him. With a terrifying boom, the karma strands were torn apart by Yi Xian. Yi Fengtian and Wan Hongling looked at each other and saw the heavy look in each other's eyes. They always knew Yi Xian was strong, but they didn't expect Yi Xian to be so strong that he could easily shatter their combined attack. Fight! The 2 of them had solemn expressions as they charged towards Yi Xian. The power of life and the power of karma intertwined as their supreme divine, might was released in a terrifying manner. Bang! Bang! The sky cracked and the sky exploded. The two disciples joined forces to fight Yi Xian. Every attack was terrifying to the extreme. Yi Xian dealt with them calmly. No matter how hard the two tried, they couldn't do anything to Yi Xian. If that's all you have, and you dare to go against me, then I've really overestimated you. As Yi Xian spoke, his 5 fingers pressed down on the two disciples. The world within 100 million miles turned dark. A giant hand appeared and slammed down on the two. Bang! Mountains and rivers exploded, and the clouds collapsed. This attack directly sent the two disciples flying, and they only managed to stabilize themselves after flying for a distance of 1,000,000 miles. Hiss! Yi Xianmo, who was watching from the side, gasped. He looked at Yi Xian with even more respect. Terrifying. Terrifying to the extreme. One had to know that Wan Hongling was on par with him, and Yi Fengtian was a cultivator who had achieved the Tao in this world. In terms of cultivation, Yi Fengtian was above him. However, when the two of them joined forces to fight Yi Xian, they were still at a disadvantage. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.